Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream. It's the pre-show. We're getting things ready here. I'm updating the website. We are recording. I can see recording going on here. I'm recording going on here and recording on the YouTube. All right, promo bar at the top of the page is updated. There's what is working there. All right. The live page is updated. If you're watching this on the YouTube side, you can go to professormesser.com/live, and there's a live chat. Or I'm watching everyone talk in the pre-show live chat. I'll be looking at that during the live stream. We'll have to get some questions going. This first hour is going to be Q&A for A+. It's the A+ study group. And then the second hour is just open phone lines where you can talk about darn near anything, whatever you'd like. Oh, warm beverage. That's nice. That gets things going. Okay, this is good. Let's do a quick camera check since we're here. Since we got stuff to do, let's check me. Hi, how you doing? I think I'm centered a little better in the screen now. Camera 2. Here's me, by the way, with a phone line, so that's useful. Camera 2. Camera 3 will do the phone line the second hour. It's camera 3 with a question that you can find at professormesser.com/QA. And there's the slides with me on it. Look at that. It all works. Who would have thunk? All right. Okay. I think we're in good shape. It is very rainy outside. It is super rain. There's a lot of rain going on. So it's probably going to rain this whole time. So hopefully there won't be any outages based on the rain. Everything seems to be going pretty well. It looks like it's just a standard slow rain, a drizzly rain. All of the really bad stuff has come through. Let's do a quick check though and see what's going on. If you can see see all the green and the yellow. So that's basically the northern part of Florida, or at least my section of it. So there's plenty of rain coming through. Let's zoom out a bit and get basically, I know you're sort of looking over my shoulder. You can't see details, though. So let's move this up so we can see to the south. And just hours of rain still coming through. Nothing too horrible. I think we're past the big band of stuff that was there. So all of that green, normally the green is rain, green and yellow and red. All the colors are rain. So there's plenty of rain out there. So hopefully we'll be okay. I think it'll be all right. Let's go back to the slides. There they are. Everything's working there. What else we got going on, peoples? It's all going well, isn't it? The Security Plus 401 was retired yesterday, technically at midnight yesterday. So all of that got wiped from the site. Not really, just hidden from the homepage. Taken out of the menus for that. But that's okay, because 501's already there. We've had the 501 videos available way early on in this. So that's kind of where that goes. There's no auto refresh pages, no, at noon. The stream is live. In fact, I should put something in here. We are live. And the website /live. And click this. Everything seems to be operating. I did for those of you that were here last week, I ran into some technical snags with my new streaming setup. And I've tested it extensively this past week. So it has just run for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of streaming, and it's been great. So we'll see if it stays that way. Now I'm just worried about the rain taking out the internet connection. Which is all right. I can't do anything about that. Can't do anything about that. I lost a video card in one of my servers yesterday. It probably lost it a while back. So I have to get a new video card for that. I need to get my bird feeder back online so you can see the backyard, so you can see the rain. Don't have that available currently, but we will hopefully in the next week. The video card I was using was a relatively low-end card, so I should be able to replace it on the eBay for about $100. Shouldn't be too bad. Oh, look, it's noisy. It's telling me there's a study group, 12 noon. We should probably look into that. I think we've got everything in place we need to have in place. You should be able to find all of the details at professormesser.com/live. Again, if you're watching this on the YouTube side, there's no live chat there. So come on over to the live chat side where there's video and chat available at professormesser.com/live. There's a link at the top of the page now that says we're live. You can click on this and it will take you here. So there you go. As far as people in the chat room saying, what book is best for A+? The best one is the one that works best for you. Everybody likes different books for different reasons. I think one of the best things you can do is go to Amazon. They let you read the first chapter or so, and you can get a feel for the author's voice, the way they write, and get a feel for, is this the book that's going to work for me? That may be a good one there. Yes, and as they say in the chat room, more than one book might be a good idea. One book might describe it one way better than another, and vice versa. You need a good book, you need some good videos, you need some good Q&A, and you need some good hands-on. Those are your 4 keys right there. You get all 4 of those, you're going to do fine on your exam. So work on that. Get that going. See what you can do with all of those things. We've got another 3 minutes and 15 seconds till we get started. So thanks for joining me on the beginnings of this. I saw there were folks in the chat room from all over. We had some from Tennessee and Augusta, Georgia, which means we were all talking about golf earlier. And then South Africa is here. So we've got a lot in the chat room. A lot of folks joining. Let's have a look at the numbers. Let's see. Is everyone gotten their updates? I sent out an email. You got information there. Let's flip down to, oh yes, we got plenty of people on. It all worked out. It's all working just fine. Got good numbers there. Got good numbers here. I think we're in pretty good shape with this. I need to get my presentation back up. Now I'm having a problem where my presentation disappears from my iPad. I think it's flipping to another wireless network is what's happening. Is that what it's doing? It may be. So let's get rid of, forget about this network. Nope. Don't know that one. Forget about this network. There we go. Forget about that. There, that should help it. Forget about this one. It doesn't know about that one. So it must be I have literally 4 Wi-Fi networks that are mine in here. So that's one of my problems. I got 99. Technically 4. I got 4 problems. Here we go. We're going to try that. See if that takes care of it. I think it will. I think that's the issue. We've got another minute and a half. We'll get started. Michigan is here. Welcome. Socrative room name is Professor Messer, although you can just go to professormesser.com/QA. If you're on the Socrative app, the room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. Yes, this is the chat. If you're on YouTube, there's no YouTube chat. You know, YouTube has a chat that goes along on the YouTube website. I don't use that. I use my own chat, which is on professormesser.com/live. So if you're watching on YouTube and you're wondering, what is this chat he's talking about? That is the chat at professormesser.com/live. And a question about, do you still have time to take the A+ 901? I will talk all about that in the first 5 minutes of the live stream. We'll talk about time frames and expiration dates and retirements and all of that nonsense. Hello, Houston. All right. What else do we need to get ready here? I think we're ready. I already did the podcast intro. You missed that part. I wasn't streaming when I did the podcast intro. That you can find all my podcast replays at professormesser.com/podcast. The video replay is always available immediately afterwards right here. I am struggling with a cough for some reason. I don't know what's going on there, but we'll figure it out. We'll make it through. I think it's about time to get started. We're going to see what we can do with this. So let's get the graphic up. Let's do this. And here we go, everybody. Welcome to the August 2018 Professor Messer A+ Study Group, coming to you live from the Messer Studios headquarters in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm your host, James Messer. For this next hour, we will go through questions and answers dealing with the A+ certification, both the 901 and the 902. Stick around also for the second hour. We sort of end the formal study group after 1 hour, and then I'll just open up phone lines. And you can call in, you can ask questions in the chat room. It's a great place to go if you're trying to get questions answered really about anything. It's open phone lines. It can be about the A+, it can be about other certifications, it can be about careers in IT, or it can be about the game you're playing on the Xbox right now, which I am doing. So we can talk about all of those. There's plenty to discuss. We'll go through all of that in that second hour. In this first hour, we're focusing on A+. I wouldn't be able to do this without your support. We've got plenty of people that have been sending me messages throughout the month. If anytime you'd like to send a note, you can always go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a contact us link there. I want to thank the folks that are watching all of my training videos online. Every video, every minute of every course is available online to watch absolutely free. You can find an index of all of those at professormesser.com. You don't have to register. They're not behind a paywall. They're just there. Some people like to have a version they can take with them offline. I have both digital and physical versions of that available. You can find out more at professormesser.com/download901. Of course, you can always subscribe to us on Twitter. I don't usually require any subscriptions, although it's very nice if you're able to follow on Twitter and subscribe on YouTube by going to professormesser.com/YouTube, professormesser.com/Twitter. That may get you exactly where you need to go. We also are providing continuing education unit credit. I realize a number of you are probably going to be renewing your A+ using the Cert Master CE, which means you don't have to pay any continuing education fees. You don't have to collect any CEUs. You can simply buy one training course, go through it in 3 to 6 hours, and you're renewed. It's way too easy. But some of you like collecting the CEUs, or you may be using the CEUs for other things. Sometime in this next hour, I will be giving you instructions and a secret code word that you can use to collect the CEU that you might be able to use to renew whatever it is that you're using for your CEUs. In the chat room, we've already had some folks ask about the A+ certification. Some of you know that after 3 years or so, a new version of an exam is usually released by CompTIA. And in fact, today is a brand new start. We retired the Security Plus, the older Security Plus exam, the SY0401, at midnight. So now the only Security Plus available for people taking their Security Plus is the SY0501. It's the normal phase-out process. It's been about a 6-month overlap, and now we're back to having a single Security Plus certification. Same thing will happen with the A+ eventually. The A+ was originally released on December 15th, 2015. So we're coming up on 3 years. That's about the time you would expect to see a new certification exam released. Whenever you're looking at getting updates to these exams, they will release the new exam, but you won't see the old one disappear. They will not retire it for usually about 6 months afterwards, which means the A+ exam that's currently available is one that's going to be around for about another 11 months. You've got plenty of time to study if you are studying for the A+ certification. Do not wait until December rolls around to decide you might want to start doing something with the certification. It's much more valuable to have that certification in your pocket. Never, never wait to get certified. Always go after it right now, and you got plenty of time to study. You got a year, effectively, just under. If you are looking to renew your A+ certification, that may be the reason you're here. You can take a renewal exam. For some of you that just love to take the exams, there's an option for you. You don't have to take both of the newer exams. Let's say you took the 800 series. You don't have to take the 900 series. They have a simple single exam you can use to renew. You can take a higher level CompTIA exam, which means if you take the Network Plus, it will renew your A+ automatically. If you take the Security Plus, it renews A+ and Network Plus. They have a big list of those on the website. There's also higher level third-party exams you can take, although it requires you to pay continuing education fees. You can take a third-party exam, and as I mentioned, earning CEUs and the Cert Master CE. As I mentioned, 3 to 6 hours of renewal, no CEU fees, and immediate renewal That's kind of nice. So if you're on your last day and it's about to expire, your 3-year certification that you earned is going away tomorrow, you can purchase this, download it, go through it, submit it before it expires, and you're renewed another 3 years. So that's a new thing they have available that you might want to look into if that happens to fit with you are doing. There is plenty on the 901, the 902 exams. We will be talking about topics from all of these things today, dealing with hardware and networking and operating systems and security and mobile devices and so much more. There's plenty in both of these exams. It makes sense that these exams indeed are split into 2 separate pieces. There's a lot of content when you look at both of these. So make sure that you know exactly what will be asked of you for these exams. You will get 90 questions on these exams over a 90-minute period. You might get fewer than 90 questions somewhere in there. There is a multiple choice and performance-based questions that are available. So you've got plenty of options available. We're going to do both kinds of those on the study group today. The passing score for the 901 is a 675 on a scale of 100 to 900. And for the 902, it's a 700 that you have to reach, a little bit higher for that one on a scale of 100 to 900. I have free questions available on my website. Go to professormesser.com/popquiz. There are questions available for the A+ and Network Plus. I'll be updating Security Plus shortly, so we'll get some of those available for you as well. But I always recommend you get plenty of Q&A. I've archived all the Q&A from these study groups, and I put them into this list. So that may be a good place to go. If you like the study group, you want to listen while you're in your car, while you're traveling, while you're working out, you can't really watch a video, there's an audio version of this available, and you can go back in time and listen to all of the archives at professormesser.com/podcast. You can subscribe with your favorite podcast app, have it automatically downloaded to your device so that you always have the latest study group available. Now, we're going to do questions and answers today. So make sure you're ready to go. You may want to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. There's also a mobile app that you can download. This is the Socrative student app. You don't want to get the Socrative teacher app. That's the one for me. Get the Socrative student app, as I enunciate it so that you can understand. Socrative, Socrative. Search for that. It's going to ask you for a room name, though. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. And if you do all of those things, instructions for this, by the way, are also on professormesser.com/live. If you didn't catch that, I went through it very quickly. There's a question waiting for you, though. If you do all of those things, you pop open a new browser, go to professormesser.com/QA, and there's a question already waiting for you that asks, which of these laptop interfaces would be the best choice for connecting an external monitor? So make sure you do that. That's a good place to go for any of those things. I think there's plenty that you could, of course, choose from, A, B, C, or D here. I've simply got a few interfaces on a laptop. If you're listening on the podcast, you'll have a hard time seeing this on the podcast, obviously. But you will be able, or I will be able to see the update as you make them. You can see there is an A interface, a B interface, a C interface, and a D interface, which correlates to A, B, C, or D. And as you can see in real time, we're seeing people answer these questions. A has 0%. Nobody's answering A yet. B has 30%. C has 67%, and D has 2%. So right now, it's kind of a B and C are fighting it out, where 2/3 of the folks have said C, and only 1/3 have said B. So hopefully you're able to see these interfaces. I don't have a way. You can zoom. Can I zoom up on it? Let's see. So you'll be able to zoom up on your app. There's a zoom. So you can see these a little bit better on your screen. So the A, B, C, and D are listed here. You need to be able to recognize interfaces. This is a question I asked last month. So this should be a question that also for you looks very familiar. Hopefully if you remember last month's study group, you remember that the answer to this question was indeed C. It's that Thunderbolt interface that's there. It could also be a mini display port, depending on the type of system you're working with. Probably on that laptop, because there was a FireWire port, that probably was a mini display port. on that particular device. Plenty of throughput available on these Thunderbolt connections, and that's one of the reasons we use them for connecting our digital displays, because we can send a lot of information back and forth. That's exactly the way I have connected my displays. I have a single iMac that's in front of me, and I have connected a secondary display via Thunderbolt. My Thunderbolt is using not this Thunderbolt or mini display connector, it's using the USB-C connector. So that's another update that has come through recently, and it'll go about 3 meters before you start to lose enough signal on that one. So if you did answer C, this nice DisplayPort or Thunderbolt connector for C is the correct choice for connecting an external monitor. Hopefully some of you have been able to see that and make that happen. So one of those that whenever I look at all of the different options available on your exam, it's important to know the type of exam that you will be faced with, or the type of questions on the exam that you will be faced with. And I mention this because a lot of the exam is multiple choice, but the first handful of questions that you're going to get from the exam are going to be something called performance-based questions. They're questions that are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be a matching question. You may have to put things in order from smallest to largest, or fastest to slowest. It may ask you to connect up and go to a command line and perform a function at a command line. It may put you at a Windows prompt on a desktop and ask you to perform a function. You have to know how to do many different things. So for the first question on these study groups, and you can go back well over a year at this point and look at the first question, is always a performance-based question. So here is our performance-based question of the month. And I want you to put these malware removal best practices in the proper order. So we've got an A, a B, a C, a D, an E, an F, and a G. So what do we do to put all of these things in the right order? And I've got, these are obviously not in the correct order now. So online, you will want to put, if you think they are in the right order, you would answer A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So of course you want to put these in the order that makes sense for the proper best practices for removing malware. So A is enable system restore. B is to schedule scans and run updates. C is to quarantine infected systems. D is to educate the end user. E is to identify malware symptoms. F is to remediate. And G is to disable system restore. So there are your A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs that you now have to put in the correct order. And you can simply put the letter in as you're putting these in here. So I know a number of you are scrambling at this point for your exam objectives. Don't refer back to your objectives. Don't Google this. You want to try to put these in the order that makes sense for you. Try to figure out what the best malware removal practices might be. This is one that you will be expected to know on the CompTIA exams. This is one that specifically is from the 902 exam, as we're mentioning on the slide. The 220-902, section 4.2, best practices for malware removal. I have a whole video on just this process. And in the chat room, people are saying these are not easy questions. These are relatively involved questions. They absolutely are. And you should expect that when you sit down, that your first questions you get will be these very involved questions. They may take you a number of minutes to get through. That's why I recommend that you do what I do. I recommend skipping all of the performance-based questions and going to the multiple choice and going all the way through the multiple choice questions and then coming back to the performance-based at the end. I find that I work better with multiple choice when I first sit down at the exam. Plus, I find that the information in the multiple choice questions tends to help me answer things that are in the performance-based questions. That's something that is relatively unique to CompTIA, because CompTIA gives you the opportunity to move around the exam to any question at any time. And because of that, you can move back and forth anytime to any question. You have the flexibility that you can jump through all of these. So hopefully that's one that might help you. Now, if you're someone who you don't have a problem with that, you want to get through the performance-based questions first, that should be your strategy. Find the strategy that works for you. My strategy is to skip them. I don't even know what I'm reading when I first sit down for the exam. I'm very nervous. There's a lot of anxiety. I'm not a good test taker. So I want to get through things that are comfortable for me, which are multiple choice questions. So they may be useful for you as well. Let's see how we did. A number of you have answered this one now. So let's step through what the proper best practices are for removing malware. Let's start with the first, which is first we have to first identify that there's malware on here at all. There's no reason to go through the process unless we're looking at our screen and seeing tons of pop-ups. There's enormous slowdowns. We're seeing odd services running on the system, weird processes we don't recognize. Maybe there was some particular incident where someone clicked on a link and suddenly the system started performing weird and they contacted you. There was something that caused you to understand there might be malware on the system. So we need to identify what those particular symptoms might be. The first answer is E, identify malware symptoms. Next on the list would be to quarantine this infected system, because malware does have the potential to move from system to system or move from storage device to storage device. So you want to disconnect all your storage devices, pull out your flash drives. You don't want to plug those into anything else. You want to disconnect from the network. So C, quarantine infected systems, would be the next thing you should do. Now what you want to do is to disable system restore. That's option G, disable system restore. Why would you want to do that? You may want to use system restore. You may be thinking to yourself, this just happened. I could go back in time to yesterday and this problem will have disappeared completely. Why don't I just restore from one of those system restore points? Well, that's because that malware knows you're going to try that. Malware is very smart, and it's already infected your restore points. It's not only infected what you were doing on your main system, it's gone back to every one of your restore points and infected those as well. So restoring from them isn't going to help you. Disable system restore. That will delete any of your restore point, and that will help you as well. Let's look at the next would be F, remediate. We need to help remove this malware from the system, or we need to completely reimage the system, which is usually my best practice. I don't like the idea of removing malware because there's no possible way that you would ever be able to know that you really 100% removed the malware. It's impossible. There's no way. You might think that you did. People feel that they really did, but did they? You never know. So in many organizations, there's not even an option. You simply reimage the system and it's back to where it was. You know 100% that you're able to do that. Makes sense to me. So the next option would be B, schedule scans and run updates. Now that you're back to a properly running system, let's scan it, make sure there is no malware found, and let's make sure we get all the updates for the operating system and updates for your anti-malware software running. That would be B, schedule scans and run updates. Your next option would be to A, enable system restore. Remember, we disabled it before. Now that our system is back and we feel that the system is clean, we can re-enable that functionality in case you would like to use system restore for something else later on. And finally, the only one left is D, to educate the end user. Again, I should put an again after the end of that. Didn't we tell the users not to click links inside of their email? Didn't we tell them not to run something? Sometimes, though, this malware is able to get into a system using a zero-day vulnerability or a vulnerability that does not require the user intervention. You can't always blame the users. People often say, I don't need anti-malware software. I'm smart enough not to click links. Well, the malware is actually smart enough not to bother you to click links. In some cases, the malware will simply go right around you and install itself. You can't trust even yourself to make sure, and you need to tell the end user, if you see anything weird, even if you didn't click something, let us know, and we'll be able to make that happen. So there's your answer, E, C, G, F, B, A, D. Those are your best practices. Those are listed in that order in the CompTIA exam objectives for the 22902 and in my video for the 22902, section 4.2, my video called Best Practices for Malware Removal. And you can go through the whole thing yourself, which is effectively what I just did for you. So there's your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that's one that can help you understand what you'll be faced with when you go to the exam. Now let's do some multiple choice questions. And so I've got one. The first multiple choice question, the podcast people are not going to be happy with me again, because the first multiple choice question I have is a picture. A picture that asks, What socket type is this? And I did not upload this picture to Socrative. I'm sorry, I just noticed that. But if you're watching online, what socket type is this? For those of you that are on the podcast, I'll describe the socket type to you. I'm looking at both a processor, the back of a processor, and I'm looking at the socket that's on the motherboard. So the back of the processor is got a lot of contacts that are completely flat. There's hundreds of copper contacts on the back of the processor, but the processor is one that does not have any type of pins on it. It's completely flat. It appears that all the pins are on the socket that is on the motherboard. So if you think you know what kind of socket it is, I have multiple choices available for you. The first option would be A ZIF. The next option B is a DIM. C is LGA. D is DDR, and E is PGA. What socket type is that? If you think you know the answer, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and see if you can answer the proper socket type for this. Obviously, the type of sockets is something you do need to know for the A+ certification. If you're building your own computer or you need to replace a motherboard in a computer or replace a processor, you'll need to know what type of processors are appropriate for that motherboard. You need to match those up, and you need to know exactly the type of socket that you'll be using because different sockets use different installation methods. So you do need to know what those are. Let's get a better picture of this. There it is. So there's that socket that we're working with. It's actually a processor, the back of a processor in a socket. So we'll flip the processor over and put it right on the top there when we're looking at it. I think I have another picture. Here's a better picture of the socket. Kind of see the pins a little better in that particular picture. So hopefully you've been able to see these pictures now and get a better idea of what you're working with. I see the number of you have answered this. Let's see how we did. We can see that 69% have said CLGA, 12% said ZIF. We have 9% that said PGA, 6% said DIM, and 4% said DDR. So what would this particular socket type be? And if we look at these, there's the answers that we have there. The 67% that said LGA. So I think you were correct. 67% that said land grid array, right on the money. That's exactly where that is. So this is one wherever I'm working and trying to figure out what kind of processor do I put into the system, you're going to need to be able to recognize sometimes by sight. You'll need to look at a motherboard and go, oh, that's an LGA processor. That's an LGA socket. That's there. So you'll know what you're working with whenever you're trying to figure out what type of processor works the best. And in fact, it really didn't fool a lot of people. I tried to get about a 50% of you getting this one right. We were pretty close, 68% LGA. We're better than normal, better than average, better than what I was expecting are there. We have the zero insertion force. The ZIF was answer A. 13% of you said ZIF. You'll commonly see ZIF used with a PGA processor, a pin grid array. It's almost the reverse of what we were looking at with a pin grid array and the zero insertion force because the pins are on the processor and the holes are on the motherboard. So it's almost the reverse. The problem that I think everyone found is that it was way too easy to bin those pins on the processor. Let's put the pins on the motherboard where they're a little safer. And that was one of the best things about that and getting through all of the pieces. DIM is a type of memory module. So that's the package you'll find on a memory module, the dual inline memory module specifically. And DDR is a type of memory. So that isn't a type of socket at all. The dual data rate is the one you'll find for DDR. So now you know what all of those different options are. They all are real technologies, but only one of them was the right answer, and that was C, the land grid array processor. That was the right answer. Well done. Let's do another multiple choice. So we've got one available. This one more of one dealing with slowdown issues. So the question is specifically about what Janet is finding. Janet is a system administrator. She's troubleshooting a laptop with slowdown issues. Which of the following would be the best way to view the amount of installed memory on this laptop? And I have a number of options available for trying to determine the best way to view the amount of installed memory on the laptop. Would it be A, use the control panel system applet? Would it be B, view startup information in the event viewer? Would it be C, select control panel, administrative tools, and hardware? Would it be D, use the control panel, storage spaces applet? Or would it be E, select device manager and choose RAM? One of those options is the best way. Some of those options are ways to do other things. Some of those options aren't real. I made them up. So you're going to have to figure out and decipher which one of those is the best way, given these possibilities. There's plenty of other ways to check, but that wasn't the question. The question says, which of the following would be the best way to do this? And this is something you will find very often with the exam, is it will ask you what the best way to do something might be given a very specific set of options. And you may find that you would use a different way to do this. Well, that wasn't the question. The question was, of these 4 or 5 options, which one of these would be the best way? You don't always have every option available to you. And the exam will often test you to see if you really know what options would be better or not better than others. The options should jump right out at you. There's not going to be a case where you're looking at it and you think this could go 50-50. They're not going to ask you a question like that. It's going to be very obvious when you look at the possible answers what they are. So let's see if we know what the answers are. Let's see how we answered this one. Let's click how do we do. 52% of us, 53% of us said A, use the control panel system applet. 22% of us said select control panel, administrative tools, and hardware. 14% said select device manager and choose RAM. 9% said view startup information in event viewer, and 3% said use the control panel storage spaces applet. Now, if we go with the slim majority that we have, 53% said A, use the control panel system applet. Is that really the right answer? Well, if you've ever gone to the control panel and used the system applet, you know that is the right answer. It's very easy to get information about the configuration of your system. You'll see exactly what processor in use, the amount of installed memory, the system type. In fact, we see the memory right there. There's a gig of memory on this VM that I built out just so I could show you on this Windows 8 machine what that happened to be. You can get a lot of other information from this system applet as well. Performance information, remote settings for remote assistance and remote desktop. And you can see all your system protection. Whenever you enable or disable system restore, for example, it's in the system applet. We were just talking about system restore with our malware. So we should be very familiar with the system applet. So let's go back. There's the system applet in the main screen. And in fact, tells you right on the screen. There's 1 gig. There's plenty of other ways to get installed amount of memory, though. You go to the system information utility, tons of utilities available at the command line. There's lots of ways to do this. But again, our option only gave us 5. And what of these 5 would be the best way to do it? It's pretty obvious that it's A, use the control panel system applet. Startup information in the event viewer doesn't give you much information about memory. There may be a line of this that goes by somewhere in the event viewer. It's almost impossible to find. Not a good choice at all. 20% of you said select control panel, administrative tools, hardware. There's not a real good place. I don't even think that exists. Is that the one I made up? I think it is. 13% said select device manager and choose RAM. That doesn't exist either. And 3% said use the control panel storage spaces applet, which is a real applet, but it's designed for large storage spaces that you would configure, not for memory configurations on your system. So it makes sense that you would look at the system applet to do that. So if you chose that, you got that one absolutely right. There is a lot of information on these exams. Already we've gone through 3 questions or so, and there's tons of details on the A+ exams. The 22901 has hardware information and networking details, and there's information about troubleshooting at the startup. All of these things are only detailed more on the 902, where you're dealing with operating systems and you have to know about security and much more information as well. What I've done is take all of the important information from my videos and I put them into one concise document. These are my 22901 and my 22902 course notes. These have a great summary of the most important things from my exam. This is not designed to replace your book. It's not designed to replace going through the videos or doing QA or getting your hands on, but it is something that can help you get that last bit of information, that summary of detail that you need before walking into the exam. I also have some test tips on this as well. They are has the old price on here, $15 each. Oh no, that is the current price, $15 each. That's a great price. Why did I think that was too low? It's $15 each for the course notes. There's also a physical version if you want to pay a little extra, and you can get this all on high quality color bound document, a book that I will send you. When you buy the printed version, there's a great shot of the printed version, you get the physical version, or you get the PDF version for free. I think I've got the course notes available on my screen. I'll show you what these look like really quick. So here they are on my screen. There they are. So here's the course notes. I've got my my 22901 here, so you can see memory. There's the land grid array that we were just looking at. Here's the 22902 with operating system and upgrade paths and all of the things you have to know at command lines. They are all on the 902 exam. Just another place you can go to get information about all of these details. So one of the most important things I say is you need to get as much information as possible. And by the way, every dollar, every cent of this goes back to keeping the website running. I want to thank everybody for your ongoing support with this. Another way that I like to give you something back. So hopefully that's something you can use for your exams as well. You can find out more information at professormesser.com/A+CN. Let's do some more. Let's go back and step through another question and answer. For those of you in the chat room, some people are saying it's buffering for me. The video is buffering. What you may want to do is scale this back to a different resolution. You may not want to run at 1080p. This is all coming to you directly from YouTube, so your problem is the link between you and YouTube. See if you can scale it down to 720 or 480. That may help you with your buffering on those. There's a good best practices for YouTube. I've got another question, though, for you. Let's do some Q&A. I've got another multiple choice, this one on networking. The question is, what two 802.11 standards use 5 gigahertz frequencies exclusively? What two 802.11 standards use 5 gigahertz frequencies exclusively? And this one is a fill in the blank. I'm not giving you a multiple choice on this one. I want you to tell me what the two standards are. Now, this means that there are two standards that use 5 gigahertz, and they only use 5 gigahertz. They are exclusive to 5 gigahertz. So make sure that when you answer, you know exactly what the two standards are that would only use 5 gigahertz. Be a good one to know if you're trying to step through this. If you think you do know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. There's no multiple choice there. You're going to have to know your 802.11 standards off the top of your head. This may be a question that you were asked dealing with performance-based questions. So make sure you understand those things as well. Yeah, we're chatting about video streaming in the chat room and going back and forth. The way this works is I send YouTube a single stream, and then they split it up into different resolutions and send it to you depending on what you're viewing. So if you're seeing slowdowns or stuttering or something that's not quite right, you may want to move to a different resolution that works a little better for you. You hit that little cog wheel at the bottom, and you can make that change in your video. That might help you a little bit. On the exam, especially the 22901, you're expected to know a lot about networking, not just wired networking, but wireless networking. So this question is going to be asking you about the 802.11 standard. Yeah, those of you, if you got a fuzzy video, you may want to go up to a higher resolution, a 1080p resolution. That would look nicer for you. That may help you. Or go to 720. You have to find that magic sweet spot that looks good, but allows you to view it in a way that's not going to buffer or stutter for you. That may be a good way to do it. 802.11 has a lot of different standards too. So make sure you're very familiar with the different standards. So many people have sent options in. This is a fill in the blank. So hopefully this is one. Some of you have said B and C. Some of you have said A and N. Some of you have said A and G. This one said A and AN. So we've got, I don't even know if, is there an AN standard? Maybe A and N is what you meant to put there. A lot of different standards available. You should know what these are when you go through them. So make sure you know what they are. Here's a nice summary. This is the summary directly from my 22901 section 2.5 wireless standards video. And this gives you a summary of all of the different wireless standards and what they are using for frequencies, how many streams are available, because some wireless standards can communicate to multiple devices simultaneously or send multiple streams of information to a single device simultaneously. And we've got some throughput values on there as well. One of the things you'll notice is there are only two standards that use 5 gigahertz frequencies exclusively. One of those is 802.11a, which you will never see anymore. 802.11a, one of the original standards, released the same time as 802.11b. And that 802.11a is one that we did use for quite a bit of time until these updates came along. We don't see much 802.11a these days. If you do need 5 gigahertz type functionality, you tend to see that with 802.11n and 802.11ac. 802.11ac is a 5 gigahertz standard, one that does this. Some of you may have seen, if you've purchased an 802.11ac router or wireless access point, it will communicate at 2.4 gigahertz. But you'll notice I didn't put 2.4 gigahertz on here. That's because 802.11ac, if it needs to communicate on 2.4 gigahertz, it actually communicates using 802.11n standard. It's backwards compatible to that. So if you're running an 802.11ac access point, but you're running on 2.4 gigahertz, it's really an N access point for you. You may want to update all of your wireless devices to use 802.11ac. So the correct answer with this one would be the two at the very end, the 802.11a and the 802.11ac running at 5 gigahertz. A lot of great functionality with the 802.11ac. We've got tons of streams available. You can do multi-user MIMO on 802.11ac, so it can be sending a video stream to one device in your house, and it can be sending a different video stream to another device in your house simultaneously. It's magic, I tell you. This is one of the great things about using AC. If you are upgrading your wireless and looking at getting 802.11ac, make sure you get an access point that can support that multi-user MIMO. It's a great functionality. So if you answered A and AC, then you got that one absolutely correct. Let's do another one. And we've got more questions available. We've got time. We've got more questions. So let's go through. One of the things on the exam, by the way, now we've gone through some hardware questions. We've gone through a networking question. We dealt with some performance issues here with malware. So the real question now, we're going to move and shift gears to something a lot of people don't expect when they sit down for the CompTIA exam, which is operating systems other than Windows. On the exam, you're expected to know a good bit about Mac OS and a good bit about Linux. So this is a question that's going to ask for your knowledge of Mac OS. And the question is, which of the following would be the best way to create a .dmg file in Mac OS? Which of the following would be the best way to create a DMG file in Mac OS, whatever that is? Let's see what our possible options are. One of the options, A, is Time Machine. B is rsync. C is disk utility. D is safe start. And E is boot camp. So which of the following would be the best way to create a DMG file in Mac OS? You have to know your Mac OS on the exam, and you have to know what these DMG files are, how to use them, how to make them. All of that becomes incredibly important. They are very commonly used in the Mac OS operating system. So make sure you know. If you think you do know, go to professormesser.com/QA. You can answer that one as well. This is one that is important. So those of you in the chat room like, I've never used Mac. I've never done this. What's the deal? You do have to know it. You will find in some organizations, large organizations, you will find a lot of places are all Mac or more than 50% Mac. It's one that you have to think about as you're managing networks. How are you going to make all these Mac devices talk to Windows? Organizations very commonly. Last place I worked, we were about 50% Mac OS. I worked at a security company, and all of the field people were all running Mac OS. And so we had to also communicate back to systems at our corporate office that were running a Windows domain. So we have to make sure all of these things can interoperate with each other. And the people that, if you've never used Mac OS, make sure you become familiar with it for the exam. It's going to be pretty important to you. Incredibly popular operating system, and one that will just make you a better tech if you're someone who can understand and work through problems that people are having with Mac OS. let's see how we did with this one. A number of you've answered all of those. So the question was, which of the following would be the best way to create a DMG file? How do we do? 53% said C, disk utility. And if we go with my 50% model, and if that is the right answer, then we were spot on. But is it really? Because we have kind of a three-way tie for second. 18% said time machine, 13% said rsync, 13% said boot camp, and only 5% said safe start. So which one of these is it? How do we know? Well, we need to go back to look at what our possible options are. One of the very popular standards for disk images in Mac OS is this DMG file. The disk images are used to send information to someone else. If you need to install an application, they're often installed from a DMG file. Sometimes it's nice to collect an entire drive and back it up as a single image of this disk image file, this DMG file. And the easiest way to do this is through disk utility. So if you're familiar at all with using disk utility in Mac OS, this is a screenshot of disk utility. This is an easy way to do it. One of the things that whenever I'm working through disk utility and building these things out, you can look into an image, you can mount it on your system. Sometimes just double clicking the DMG file is enough. It will mount it and you'll see it in the Finder that's in Mac OS. If you need to restore from your image, you can also do that in disk utility. Simply choose the image and you can restore that image to a particular volume. That may be a good way to do it as well. So that is the correct answer. And folks in the chat room are saying, well, I guessed at that one. Guessing work. Guessing is just as valid at getting a correct answer than knowing the answer. So if you don't know the answer in your exam, absolutely guess. Never leave a question blank. Questions that are blank get you 0 points. Questions you get wrong, still get you 0 points. But questions that you happen to guess and get correct get you a positive number of points. So that's why it's important to always guess on the exam. Never leave a question blank. Getting a question wrong doesn't count against you. They don't take points away from you, as far as we can tell. So make sure you at least give it a chance. Disk utility C was the right answer. 53% of you got that right. Time Machine A is the backup system built into Mac OS where someone can go back in time and restore files or versions of files. It's not creating a DMG file. It's not creating a disk image for that. 18% of you chose that one. rsync is a way to remotely synchronize files between systems or between different parts of your computer. 13% said rsync. rsync doesn't use DMG files either. 12% said boot camp. Boot camp is the built-in method in Mac OS that will reboot the system into Windows. So for those of you that have Windows-based applications, maybe you're a gamer and you have a Mac system, you can reboot your system into Windows 10. And now you're running Windows on what effectively is Apple hardware, which works exceptionally well. And then you've got Safe Start. Safe Start, not used for disk images, but is a way to safely start your system. 4% chose Safe Start. Well done with that one. This is one whenever I start looking at all of these different options, you got a lot of things that you need to choose from. Some of you were able to go through this and really figure out what the right answer is based on what you knew to be wrong. So it's the calculatus limitatus situation where you can really go through and try to figure out what is right based on what you know to be wrong. That's a good strategy and one you should consider. One place you can test that strategy might be in my pop quiz collection PDFs. I have hundreds and hundreds. If you combine them, there's over 1,000 questions available in my pop quiz PDFs where I've taken and written all new questions very specific to the A+ exam. So if you're someone who is going through all of your A+ exam and you're trying to get more Q&A, I always mention Q&A is a good thing. This is one way to do it. On this particular Q&A, I'm going to try to make this 2 pages so you can see the pop quiz collection. I'm going through a number of questions on my screen. One of the questions, I should probably make this 1 page because this is very small to read. Let's do a single page. We'll zoom up on it so you can see. The way this is laid out is it's all a PDF. So the whole thing is digital. I don't have a physical version of that. That's because you're able to choose answers. We'll go down a number of pages so you can see one. Which of these would be a valid upgrade path from Windows 7 Home Premium? Pick 2. And then I've got A, B, C, D, and E. And if you think you know the answer, you simply click jump to answer, and it takes you to the page that gives you the question again, and then gives you what the possible answers are, in this case, A and E, and gives you an explanation of why that particular answer was correct. It then gives you the objective that particular question is associated with, a link to the video where you can watch the video for that, or maybe simply want to go to the next question. And if you click that, it goes back to that original page you were on to the next question, which is which of the following would best describe PowerShell? And you can jump to the answer, see what the answer is, the explanation of the answer, same process, go to the next question. So simply by clicking through here, you're able to go from question to question. And when you click the answer, it doesn't spoil the answer for you. You don't see the answer of the next question. So that's one you want to think about too, whenever you go through there. This pop quiz is one that is available for both the 22901 and the 22902. If you want to know more information about these, you can go to professormesser.com/PQC for pop quiz collection. Another one of those. People in the chat room saying, can you make some of these for Security Plus and Network Plus? We're already working on it. Already getting there, because people, they love the pop quiz collections. I'm creating for Security Plus a little bit different style, very similar, but one that's more of a sample exam. What if you're able to go through an entire exam that was structured and laid out exactly like CompTIA's, and you could really test yourself that way? So we're working on those types of things and getting through all of those. So if you, it's another way to help support the site as well. Thanks for your support with these. Go to professormesser.com/PQC. I got more questions. Let's do another pop quiz question here on the study group. I've got one. By the way, I write all new questions for these study groups. You won't find any of the questions we do here in the pop quiz collection, or vice versa. So all the pop quiz collection are things that we've written over time. You won't find those on the study groups. You won't see any repeats as you go through those. So here's a question for you that asks about a loopback plug, and specifically asking which of these would be the best use of a loopback plug. And I have some options available to choose from. So you've been given this loopback plug. What are you doing with it? Well, are you A, find the other end of an Ethernet cable, B, test the interface of a router, C, troubleshoot a motherboard startup process, D, check a power supply voltage, or E, perform a wire map? Which of those would be the best use of a loopback plug? Hopefully it's one that you know about. It's certainly one you need to know for the A+ exam, specifically the 22901. It's a 901 question. If you think you do know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer that. Don't mention it in the chat room. No guesses in the chat room. No hints. We want to try to answer this as if we were sitting in the exam with no resources available at all. There's no Google. There's nobody to ask. You can't look over at somebody else's screen to get that one. You have to figure those details out. That's one I think that can be useful if you're trying to get ready for an exam, is try to test yourself with these things that are in the exam objectives. Every one of those objectives you should know about. So hopefully it's one that you're familiar with as well. The Network Plus, some folks are asking if would studying the Network Plus have prepared you for the 902 exam? Studying the Network Plus would have probably prepared you with a section of the 901 exam, because that's where networking is. And I think it would have helped. It doesn't cover everything. But there's a good bit of overlap in that networking section. That would help you. So if you're someone who's gone through the Network Plus, you probably know this answer, because this particular loopback plug question is indeed on the Network Plus exam as well. So hopefully that will give you a hint, because how do we do? Test the interface of a router, 62%. I think I had 1, 2, 3 of those questions were networking related. So hopefully that's one that gives you some idea on these pieces. This is one where you do have to think about 62% said test the interface of a router. 22% of you said find the other end of an Ethernet cable. 7% said perform a wire map. 5% said troubleshoot a motherboard startup process. And 4% said check a power supply voltage. So what is this loopback plug, and what is it good for? Well, it actually can come in very, very handy. It effectively takes everything going out of a port and loops it back to the same port. So it goes out the transmit wires of one port into the receive wires of exactly the same port. Well, why would you do that? Why would you go through that process of trying to do all of those things, go back and forth with those? Well, testing the physical port itself is one good reason for doing it. There's a utility that you would send information out the port, and that same utility will examine what it receives back. And by putting the loopback plug on, you can see exactly what you're sending and seeing if you're receiving exactly what you're sending. It's a great way to test the port. There's loopback plugs available for different ports. So you can get a loopback plug for a serial connection, for an RS-232 connection, for network connections. There's fiber loopbacks. There are copper loopbacks. There's Ethernet. It's important to understand, though, that these are not crossover cables. Crossover cables are completely different. They are connecting two different devices from transmit to receive. A loopback plug is sending it back to the exact same device. So that's an important consideration when you're looking at those. So looking at the answers, if you did answer B, test the interface of a router, 62% of you got that one absolutely correct. So that's a good example. 22% of you said find the other end of an Ethernet cable. That's not what a loopback plug would be good for. In fact, finding the other end of an Ethernet cable is probably best if you had a toner and a probe to have those pieces on it. And then the 7% perform a wire map. Loopback plugs don't perform a wire map. Usually that's a cable tester or a cable analyzer. 5% said troubleshoot the motherboard startup process. Usually you have a postcard or something else other than a loopback plug to help with a motherboard startup process. And 4% said check a power supply voltage. Usually that's a multimeter or a power supply tester, which is one that I used yesterday. I thought I had a power supply go bad. Instead, I had the video card I mentioned earlier. The video card went bad when working with those. So that's one where you do have to know what a loopback plug is for, and testing the interface of a router would be a perfectly good reason to use a loopback plug. 62% of you got that one absolutely right. Folks in the chat room are going back and forth over what's on the latest A+ exam. Some of the exam objectives are out, though. You can find the exam objectives. I don't know if the objectives are out, but I saw them on the internet. It's one of those things. So I can give you a feel for what's on the new exam, but it doesn't matter because that doesn't come out until December. Never wait to get certified anyway. You want to go right now and get your certification, have that in your pocket. You'll be A+ certified regard. They could change the exam every week. It doesn't matter. You need that certification. You need to have it in your pocket. Let's go back and do another multiple choice question. I've got one for you. This is one that discusses network administration. So let's see what the answer is here. Then we'll go through the possible answers there. The question is, a network administrator would like to prevent wireless network names from appearing in a list on a workstation or mobile device. Which of these technologies should be used to configure this setting? Would it be MAC address filtering? That was A. B is implicit deny. C is WPS PIN. D is WPA2 encryption. And E is SSID broadcast suppression. One of those is the right answer. If you're managing a wireless network, that's something you do need to know. How do you prevent wireless network names from appearing in a list or workstation, in a list on a workstation or a mobile device? Which of these technologies should be used to configure this setting? Some of you in the chat room, oh yeah, we did this on Security Plus. That makes sense for those and having those available. For those of you wondering if Windows XP is going to be off the A+ exam, XP is not on the A+ exam. Hasn't been on the A+ exam for years. So you don't have to worry about that. Congratulations. No XP for you. So that's, a lot of people think whenever I hear people talk about the A+ exam, I have to study they talk about a particular technology. I'm tired of having to study that technology. Well, congratulations. You don't have to study that technology to have that there. That helps. Whenever you get through yes, Windows 3.1 is not on the exam. I assure you, we've gotten rid of it completely on the exam. And I see this all the time though, where people do complain about all of those pieces. One of the challenges you have though, and A+ is probably the one exam that has the biggest challenges, is that the issues associated with technology at the workstation level and operating system level change so rapidly relative to Network Plus or Security Plus. Network Plus, there's not a lot of dramatic changes in networking. There certainly are updates over the years, but it doesn't change near as fast as operating systems. Security technologies are dealing with hardware. Really, hardware changes so fast. So that's why by the time you get down to where we are now, where there's kind of 3 years into it, you're starting to see a little bit of age on there, but usually it's updated pretty nicely when you get there. So the question on here for us is that a network administrator would like to prevent wireless network names from appearing in a list on a workstation or mobile device. Which of these technologies should be used to configure this setting? And let's see how we did with our options available. We have 81% that said SSID broadcast suppression, but 11% said MAC address filtering. 6% said WPA2 encryption, 2% said implicit deny, and 0%, a big goose egg, said WPS, personal identification number. And wouldn't it be great if that was the answer? Well, surprise, it's not. It is indeed SSID management. Being able to suppress that SSID broadcast becomes very useful to keeping it off of a list. The first thing you want to do is, of course, not have an SSID that's the default. You don't want the SSID to say Linksys. You don't want it to say Netgear. In fact, you may not want it to be very descriptive at all from these. So that's one that's that you may want to make it something that's a little unusual or not as obvious so people don't know that it's your SSID. The reality, though, is changing these names or hiding the SSID with SSID broadcasting doesn't actually hide it. It's not a security feature. Someone who's very knowledgeable in using packet captures over wireless networks can very, very easily find out where this SSID is. So that's one that does come in handy to know, is that this isn't stopping people from finding this SSID. If somebody wants to find it, they will find it. So make sure you do this. People in the chat room are saying free malware. There's a good SSID. Or searching ... That's a good, I like that SSID, searching. FBI surveillance van. That's a very common one. I've actually seen that one before. But you can make that SSID whatever you'd like to do, but disabling it just doesn't have it come up in the list that people will choose from, which does help get rid of clutter. So if there's a lot of SSIDs in your environment, and really the most important ones are on the list, it's one that nobody's going to connect to through this automated choosing a list of these, then you do want to choose E, SSID broadcast suppression. That is the correct answer. 82% of you got that one right in working with those. One of the things that I have on mine, I just leave mine transmitting. Just make sure the important part of security on a wireless network is not that you're suppressing the name in a list, it's that it's properly secured so that you're doing WPA2 encryption. That is one that will prevent people from connecting. It will, of course, be able to prevent somebody from accessing or seeing data if they were to capture this with a capture device. So WPA2 is the way to really ultimately protect your wireless networks, regardless of whether your SSID, sending that SSID and suppressing that or not. And if you are watching this to get a continuing education unit credit, if you're someone who is collecting those, one of the ways that you can earn that is to follow this process. You have to follow this process to earn it. You have to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You go to the Contact Us link. And on that Contact Us link, you want to give me your name. You want to give me your email address, or I can't send you the CEU. And you want to say that this is the August 2018 A+ study group. And somewhere in there, you want to be able to put the special code word of the month, which is SSID broadcast suppression. I guess you could just put SSID. Make it easy. We'll make the magic code word SSID. I'm the one reading through these. If you want to put anything else in there, any comments to me, anything you'd like me to see, you can always do that as well. Make sure you have that on your network. Send that to me over your email so you can receive it back in your email client. That is one that will get you. It usually takes me about a week to go through these, but I have a set of scripts and automation process on my system. So you have to follow that process, which tells me that you not only listen to this and you know the process, but it helps me very quickly get these back to you. Make sure you do that. SSID is that special code word for this. We've got just a couple minutes left. Let's get through one more question. I think we can do that, right? Here's our last Q&A, and then we'll open up the phone lines. Our question is from a system administrator. Has replaced the motherboard in a server used by the accounting department. When they start their financial software, this message appears. Key not valid. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this error? Would it be A, the motherboard is not compatible with the accounting software? Is it B, the software is configured with DRM? Is it C, the registry is corrupted? Is it D, the software is infected with malware? Is it E, the software needs to be upgraded? So those are your 5 options. A system administrator has replaced the motherboard in a server used by the accounting department. When they start their financial software, the message appears, key not valid. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for that error? Is it the motherboard's not compatible with the accounting software, the software is configured with DRM, the registry is corrupted, the software is infected with malware, or the software needs to be upgraded? If you think you know the answer, don't go to the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA, and you want to be able to answer there, A, B, C, D, or E. This is something that's you'll run into. Maybe not with accounting software, maybe with something else. This is something you have to know about and you have to understand if you're going to be working with these systems and making changes like replacing motherboards. There's something you run into all the time. Stick around for the next hour, by the way. We're going to open up the phone lines, and you're welcome to call in or ask questions in the chat room. I'll take questions from there as well and have those pieces there. That might be useful to ask questions there instead of having to call in. And I've got ways that you can call in from other countries as well for free. Stick around for that too. Let's see how we did with this, though. You've replaced that motherboard. Now you get key not valid. Why? Why has this happened? 58% of you have said the software is configured with DRM. 19%, kind of a tie for second, 19% said the registry is corrupted. 19% said the software needs to be upgraded. 4% said the motherboard is not compatible with the accounting software, and 1% said the software is infected with malware. So why would we get a problem saying a key would not be valid? That doesn't seem like something that you'd have occur just by replacing a motherboard. Motherboards themselves are not something that have keys on them, are they? So why would we get a problem with a key or a problem associated with this? Well, the biggest problem associated with these and having to deal with all of those things is really focused on DRM. DRM stands for Digital Rights Management. And this is where the person who has produced a product, maybe it's media, maybe it's an application, maybe it's something associated with something running on a computer, has decided to create a series of software-based protections around that particular media. So you may see applications or documents or games or movies or audio use this DRM to either allow or not allow someone to use that particular piece of document or video or movie or game or application. This may be controlled through the use of software. You can also use hardware. I said software earlier, but this could be a hardware-based DRM. There's some DRM that requires a very particular USB key plugged into a system. Ostensibly, I suppose they've got a digital certificate on there that allows someone to run the software and have those pieces. The problem, though, is there's no standard for DRM. There's many different kinds of DRMs that you might run into. Some are proprietary DRMs written by companies that make accounting software. Some DRMs are very well known and are supported in certain types of media players, and those media players can play DRM that is specific to that particular kind. So there's one of those you'll run into, and when you're replacing a motherboard, I suspect that the software originally was expecting this particular system, and then when the motherboard changed, the software recognized that the motherboard changed and said something's not valid. Now the system, somebody copied this to a new computer. That's what it probably was thinking, and said key not valid. And it's referring to a license key. It's referring to the key that's required to get the software up and running. So 57% of you that said the software is configured with DRM, You got that one absolutely right. Now, why wouldn't it be one of these others? If we have a look at this list of the others that's there, the motherboard's not compatible with the accounting software, or motherboards, as long as we're swapping out the same type of motherboard, an Intel motherboard for an Intel motherboard, we're in pretty good shape there. The motherboards are designed to run software regardless of what motherboard model happens to be. You don't have to buy a particular motherboard model for particular software. Can you imagine what that would be like? Fortunately, we don't. The registry is corrupted. The registry is always corrupted. It's always the registry, isn't it? But in this case, key not valid doesn't point us to a registry problem. It points us to a licensing issue. 18% of us said the software needs to be upgraded. Well, we didn't change anything with the software. We simply upgraded the motherboard. And as I mentioned, the type of motherboard and the software aren't things that generally are connected with each other. We can take any kind of motherboard from any manufacturer, and generally we can run any software on that. That would be quite unusual for someone to lock their software down to a type of motherboard. That would probably be crushing. That would not be a good business model for this accounting company. And the software is infected with malware. We just swapped out the motherboard. There was really no opportunity for it to be infected with malware, so that was not the issue either. The answer really is B. The software is configured with digital rights management. 58% of you got that one right. All of these questions, all of this content comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. Make sure you get your hands on these objectives. Go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. This could make or break you on the exam, by the way. This is a great checklist. This will help you understand if you're ready to take the exam. People ask all the time, what do I need to know to take this exam? It's in there. It's in the exam objectives. Make sure you have a look at that as well. We do one of these study groups every month. You're welcome to join us. If this is before September the 5th, 2018, you can join us for the next A+ study group then. Make sure you check in. We've also got a list. If this is after September the 5th, 2018, when you're watching this replay, you can go to the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar or use the calendar link at the top of the page, and you yourself can see when the next live event's going to be. In fact, we have a live event coming up next week is the Network Plus study group, same place, same time, on Wednesdays at noon Eastern time. And I've got a Security Plus study group a week after that, and you're welcome to join us for those as well. A lot going on with all of that. Well, we've come to the end of the formal Q&A. As I mentioned, stick around for the after show. Well, I'll just open up the phone lines. We'll ask questions till one of us gets tired of it, is usually how it works. You can, of course, get a free A+ pop quiz question every day on Twitter. I just send you one every Monday through Friday. You can find that at professormesser.com/Twitter. You can find one also. All the new videos coming out are going to be on YouTube. You may want to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Find it there at professormesser.com/YouTube. My course notes available, of course, at professormesser.com/A+CN. The pop quiz collection is available at professormesser.com/PQC. And of course, our free study groups every month. Come back, join us. We'd love to have you here. Follow the next events that are available at professormesser.com/calendar. Well, that brings us to the end of the first hour. Thanks for joining us. We love to have you here. Hopefully you can be here for next month. Stick around for the next hour. We'll open up the phone lines. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Well, can you believe it? We made it through the entire hour without any type of streaming problem. I say this, let me knock on something quickly. There's no real wood in here. I don't know what we're going to do with that. Let's get the phone lines up and running, though. And I'll also take questions from the chat room. Somebody in the chat room asked if I was going to create a Pen Test Plus exam or a set of courseware. No, I'm not. Not creating any Pen Test Plus. There's probably 5 people in the world that will be able to take advantage of that. Just not enough people. And there's not enough jobs for everybody to be a pen tester. It sounds great. Wouldn't it be great if we could just all do pen testing all day, every day? Such a tiny percentage of security jobs have anything to do with pen testing. So that's what that's about. Let's start the call-in lines, because you can't even get there right now. And I'll tell you in a moment how you can do that. First, I need to call in because my call-in lines are in the cloud. So let me call in very quickly. Let me find the call-in lines. Let me call the call-in lines. Let me log into the call-in lines. It's very involved, isn't it? Have all of these things here. And I need to click this thing here. Is it asking me something? Oh, there. Yes, gotcha. So I need to type a couple of numbers onto my screen and hit a pound sign, and it says,
enter your six.
Yes, let's type that in and type another thing in and a third thing in, and it should say,
welcome.
There we go, welcome. That means that you're welcome. So you're, of course, can dial in as well. 855-785-7545 is toll-free number, absolutely free to have all of that there to call in from anywhere in the continental United States, which is great, unless you're outside the continental United States. And if you are, you can go to Skype and absolutely free, no Skype minutes required. Go to +1 855-785-RJ45, and you too can join us on the Skype side. You can call in. It's just like a normal call-in line at that point to have that there. There is and don't get me wrong, people that were asking about the Pen Test Plus, there are a group of people in security we rely on to do penetration testing. They need as many resources available, and it's a fun job if you can get it. But it's such a small percentage of IT security jobs that for my particular business model where I'm creating content as an individual, I need to create content that's going to help as many people as possible. So that's one where I got to focus on what can I do to get the most number of people trained and informed. What content should I choose? It's a constant battle, by the way, on my side to figure out what should I be doing? Which one of these should I do? And I go back and forth. I always think I know what I'm going to do next. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Let's see what someone else will be doing next. Let's go to the phone lines and find out from the 561 area code in South Florida. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Helps if I turn you up there. Hi, caller.
Hello?
There?
Yes, hi. Good morning, Professor Messer. How are you?
Thanks for calling. Is this Ed?
It is.
Hey, welcome. Welcome. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Well, my question is regarding firewalls and ingress and egress filtering.
Well, you've come to the right place. As a former firewall systems engineer, I will tell you way more than you ever want to know about that particular topic. What specifically are you interested in?
Well, for instance, for home use, setting the rules. And it says, I guess in general, you would not accept any connections that originate from outside your firewall.
That is usually a good best practice for something at home. That is usually the best practice. Is this a home-based firewall, like a Netgear firewall that you buy off the shelf at Best Buy, or have you installed pfSense or some other type of firewall at home?
No, I'm just basically using the host software that's Windows 7.
Okay, sure. Got it. So the built-in personal firewall that's part of the Windows operating system.
Correct.
Got it.
And so the other question is on the egress filtering. Is there any reason why I would need to block common port numbers, like port 443 or anything like that?
First, let's talk about what the options are in the Windows firewall, which, by the way, is a very, very good firewall. If you're somebody who's using the Windows operating system, and what we found, these personal firewalls that are in Windows, they're in Mac OS, they're in Linux, they're in all of these operating systems we use as individuals. Those operating system firewalls are really good, primarily because the firewalls know what you're doing. The firewalls know that you are using a particular application, and then it can allow or disallow what that application is doing over the network. So they have much more visibility into what you're doing than a lot of the network-based firewalls that are out there, which is why they're so useful, and why I always recommend that you always keep your personal firewall turned on, especially if it's a mobile device that will be going other places. The options, though, in the Windows firewall are many and varied. The default is to prevent any type of access on the inbound if you've set up your firewall to be that way. There's different settings you can set up for Windows. You can tell Windows where you are. Are you at work? Are you at home? Are you outside both of those in a public area? And the firewall will adjust itself depending on where you are. In fact, the firewall, once you've told it where your home is or where your work is, it starts deciding where you are based on IP addresses and can even recognize when you're outside of your office or your home and automatically set your firewall appropriately to be much more secure when you're outside of one of those more trusted places. Most of the time, unless you have some... Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, now how does it know where you're at then? I mean, how do you make that setting, or does it do that automatically?
It will do it when you first set up the adapter that you're plugging into, or the network that you're connecting to. It will make a determination there of where you are based on IP address. And it may even prompt you, hey, we just saw this new network you're connecting to, network number 1. What network is this? And you get prompted in Windows what that happens to be. If it recognizes that it's an internal IP address, like a 10 dot address, a 172.16, a 192.168, for example, it will automatically decide that you're on some private network, and it will adjust its firewall accordingly. But then it decides if you suddenly go somewhere else and that number changes, suddenly you're on a different subnet. You were on a 192.168. Now suddenly you're connecting to a 10 dot network. It may prompt you and say, wait a second, this is new. We're somewhere new. Where are we? And you can decide there, oh, I'm outside in public. Let's set this firewall so that nobody has a possibility of connecting inbound to me. They can't share any of the shares that I've configured on my system. They can't get to any services that might be running on my computer. And that's why I will tell people, use that firewall when you're out at a coffee shop, when you're at a trade show, when you're in a hotel. That way it knows you're in public and nobody can possibly connect to that. I can't even tell you, when I used to travel, how many times I would be in a hotel and I would just pop open the browser to show me what all the systems are in the hotel. And I get a huge list of names of people. Fred's Macintosh, Server Zero. You got this huge list of names that are advertising themselves, obviously don't have a firewall turned on or a minimal amount of firewalling, and they have things you can connect to. They have services. They're sharing their iTunes library, and I could be in my hotel room and play music from their computer that's on a system I don't even know whose it is, somewhere else. That's one of the benefits of having that firewall set properly, because you could have people connecting inbound to you to services you didn't even really know you were running or had available, and there it is, just like you were at home. Now people outside are able to do that.
Okay.
It's useful to go through the fundamentals of the Windows firewall. In fact, the 902 course I have goes through the basics of Windows firewall, and then it goes through the advanced functionality. And you were mentioning enabling or disabling certain ports. For the most part, you never have to touch those unless you're running some type of service on your computer that other people need to connect to. Maybe you're setting up a web server on your computer that people need to connect to from outside. Then you will need to open up port 80 and port 443. And perhaps on Windows firewall, you might even say only open those ports for this particular service, so that if I was running other services on my computer that happen to use those particular port numbers, people wouldn't be able to connect to those. Windows firewall knows the difference and can set it up appropriately for you.
And that would be setting it up for outbound, right?
That would most of the times be setting it up for inbound into your system. Very rarely in Windows Firewall do you ever have to open up additional ports so that you get outbound coverage. The default coverage on Windows Firewall is to allow all outbound initiated traffic, because it figures if you're the one initiating that outbound, it must be okay. That isn't always the best thing. There's some malware that can infect your system, and the malware is going to try to connect outbound to the mothership, to the centralized management for that particular, and they're going to use some weird port number to do that. And the default for most of these operating system firewalls is to simply allow that traffic. That's why you see certain applications, for instance, in Mac OS, there's applications like Little Snitch that will monitor every connection. And if suddenly it sees something that's brand new that it's never seen before, it prompts you and says, hey, I'm seeing this application is now sending traffic. I've never seen this application send traffic before. Is that okay? You might even spend the first day finally saying, yes, Adobe can go connect to its update. Yes, Windows can go connect to its update. I don't know of a Little Snitch, something that's similar to Little Snitch in Windows. Maybe somebody in the chat room does. There's got to be something out there that really allows you a very granular control of all outbound traffic. I use Little Snitch on my system because if I am infected and something is communicating outbound, I want to know it immediately and shut it down. And it does allow me some control over applications that maybe I just don't want Adobe talking out to the internet right now. You can configure those things as well. There's a lot of different utilities depending on the application you're using, and I recommend getting some knowledge about what is communicating from your system. It only makes you that much safer.
But you're saying Little Snitch does not work on Windows.
That is an app specifically written for Mac OS, and I don't use Windows enough to know what a good alternative to that is, but I'll bet somebody has asked the question out on the inner tubes somewhere. This may be an opportunity for somebody to report back to me. And if somebody finds one, they can always send me a note on my website at the Contact Us link. I'd like to know. Maybe I'll load it up on my Windows 10 system and see how that works for me.
Okay. Well, thanks again for your information, sir.
Thanks for calling, Ed. Those are always good things to do. I do that on my system because I want to know what's outbound. I want to know what is communicating out to the rest of the world. I don't want to be caught suddenly. Oh, you've had a botnet on here. It's been communicating out for a long time. Well, I should have known that. I should have caught it when it happened. People in the chat room, I see some calls coming in before we go there. How long of a wait between the 901 and 902 would I suggest? However long it takes. So my strategy for the 901 and 902 is that you get the exam objectives for the 901. You go through all of the exam objectives. You study everything associated with the 901. You learn everything that's on that objective list. You read the books. You watch the videos. You do the Q&A. You get the hands-on. You go take the exam and you pass it. Then you go do exactly the same thing, but for the 902. Get the exam objectives, read your books, watch the videos, do the Q&A, get the hands-on. Go through all of the 902, then take that exam. So the question about how long is that gap in between, it's however long it takes. You obviously need to take both of these exams before they are retired. So if you took and passed the 901 right now, you've got about 11 months. You've got to finish that 902 before the exam series is retired. So that's the important part to think about. Some people take both on the same day. I never recommend this. Even if you're someone who is really familiar with the content, I would not recommend this. It's a lot of sitting. It's a lot of being at the machine. It's a lot of going through. Some people do it and they're great with it. If you're that kind of person, you can do that. I do not recommend studying for both simultaneously. I recommend studying for one, passing that, and then studying for the other. There's very little overlap between those two exams. So don't think that you need to do it. Some people take them years apart. So it's whatever works for you and having accessibility for you. And then I've got other questions in the chat room have come up and other things there. I've got someone, though, on the phone from the 704 area code. Hi, caller. Thanks for calling. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, I'm calling from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Welcome.
I'm actually with, thank you. I'm actually with CompTIA. We have like a class called IT Ready, but it's like 25 of us, and we just have a few questions about the 902 exam, mainly just could we study best for the 902 and basically like the simulations.
Yeah,
because we're kind of struggling on the simulation section.
It's one you really do have to prepare for because it's something most people aren't ready for. And it's the performance-based questions, the ones I mentioned at the beginning of the study group, is that you may be asked anything but multiple choice. It might be a fill in the blank. It might be a scenario question where you have to drag and drop things onto an image. It might be putting things in order from highest to lowest. It might be it gives you a bunch of protocols and tells you to match the port numbers to it. So there's matching involved. You never know what you're going to get. As I mentioned, you can always go to the first question of every study group that I've done for the past year or year and a half now. And I've got a performance-based question at the very beginning of every single one of those. After about a year, you start to see a similarity. I really duplicate every 12 months. I mix them up a little bit and I change them. But you see at least the last 12. You can go back to the last 12 and they're all very different. You might be presented with a network diagram. and you have to figure out what the rules might be for a particular scenario they give you. So there's a lot of reading associated with them. There's a lot of understanding what is the question they're asking. Often there are multiple questions that have to be asked, but the important thing is that if you know the content for the 901 or you know the content for the 902, it doesn't really matter how they ask the question. If they're asking you to match port numbers and you're solid with your port numbers, you can match those up very quickly. There's not a lot of complexity associated with that. Now, one of the things they might do is put you at a command prompt, and they might tell you that you're having a problem booting a system. Here's the error that you're getting. Fix it. And that's not a lot of information to go on. So you do have to be very familiar with how to handle things at a command prompt. Those are simulation type questions, and they require that you have some very solid knowledge of this technology, of hands-on. That's why when I mention when you're studying, use the exam objectives, get a good book, watch the videos, get Q&A, and get plenty of hands-on. The hands-on is really going to help you for those types of questions. But don't think that the whole thing is simulations. You're not going to get 8 questions at the beginning that are all command prompt questions. They're going to be mix and matches, and you may find they're actually a little bit easier than what you may have expected. So don't overthink it, but make sure that you're very solid with knowing the type of content, and go through a few of them from the study groups. You may find that these are more comfortable in what they're being asked of you than you might not have realized.
All right. Well, thank you for your help. Do you think I could give a shout out?
Why not? We're on the line. Go ahead.
I'd just like to shout out my boy, Fred Burns, and Brandon Steele. He's our instructor. Rachel, just shout her out. And Tasia, she's a big help. Brian, he's always knowledgeable.
Fantastic.
And thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for calling. And good luck with your exams. That's always good to think over and have a strategy. I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the study group, my strategy for my performance-based questions was to skip them. Not completely. I need to come back to them eventually. My strategy was to skip them, go all the way through the multiple choice, and then come back to performance-based. So your strategy might be a little bit different, but you need to have a strategy. Regardless of what it is, make sure you think about what your strategy is going to be when you go through those. Let's go back to the questions from the chat room. Somebody was asking about the Google certifications. Google, as some of you knew, this was a number of months ago, introduced a series of Google certs. And there was in fact, I was talking with Mrs. Professor Messer just this morning about this. We were talking about, what are we doing next? What are we doing the next 6 months? What are they doing the next 12 months? We were having a planning meeting over blueberry pancakes, and we were thinking, what are we going to do next? And we were talking about the Google certification that was released, 6 months ago or so? There was a big hubbub over that, and then I heard nothing since right now. In fact, we were mentioning that nobody's mentioned the certification as being a real driving force for them, as something they just have to do. And I think part of that may be related to just taking some time. It usually takes a minimum of a year for a certification to get some traction out in the industry. And then after that, there's a number of other things that help get a certification to really get traction, because I think most people are taking a certification for probably 2 big reasons. There's a lot of reasons you would take a certification and earn a certification, but there's 2 big reasons. One of them is you're looking for a job, or you're looking for a better job, and you want something to help with that. The certification doesn't replace a formal education. It doesn't replace any type of knowledge. But of course, experience and formal educations don't replace certifications. They're all separate tools. They're all separate criteria that can be used to help you in your job hunt. So if you're looking to get a job, a better job, that's one reason. The other big reason is you're trying to learn more about a technology. Some people go through these certification programs. They watch all of my videos, not because they're going to take the certification exam, but they're doing it because they need that knowledge to help them in a particular role. So they're a help desk technician. They're somebody who's trying to move into networking. They're trying to move into security, and they don't need the Security Plus certification, but they need that knowledge that came from Security Plus. The Network Plus exam, the Security Plus exam, the A Plus exam, this is good content. knowing how to troubleshoot problems, how to understand what's happening on the network, knowing these protocols and what they're used for, knowing these security technologies, those are important things you need to know if you're planning to get into that part of information technology. So make sure that when you're looking at what certification do I take? Do I take the Google certification? Well, if the content on the Google certification is one that's going to help you, maybe you should. Even if employers aren't looking for it, maybe it's still going to help you. So there's a balancing act and working through those things. Make sure you know what that balancing act is and how it works. Real quick, we'll go to the calls again. Someone on the chat room has gone to the voucher code on my site, which is at professormesser.com/vouchers. That's a 10% off voucher. There's a big list of rules that are associated with that voucher code. So make sure you check those rules. Make sure you go through every single one of them that they match what you're trying to do. It's 10% off, but it's a very specific 10% off. Like the back of the coupon, it's all very tiny writing. It's one of those. But that's what's available. So there's nothing I can do about that one. Those are the criteria set by CompTIA. Make sure you read through those very carefully at professormesser.com/vouchers. Back to the phone calls. Let's go to the 646 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi.
Hello. Hi. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Troy Pickney from New York City.
Oh, welcome, Troy. What can we do for you?
I first want to say I really appreciate your videos. They really helped me a lot to pass the A+ and so forth. I watched them faithfully and it helped a lot.
You're welcome, sir. Thank you for calling.
My question is there a main difference between the network 06 and 07?
A good question, since the biggest difference right now between the Network Plus N10-006 and the N10-007 is that the N10-006 will be retired at the end of this month. So you have 4 weeks, I guess 5 weeks in this month. You have this month at the end of August the 31st, the 006 exam will retire. And so a lot of people are moving to the N10-007 or they're planning to take the N10-007. So I get a lot of questions like yours, which say, how do I make that jump? Is there a big jump associated with it? So let me tell you exactly the difference in content between those two. I did a spreadsheet where I took every single exam objective from the N10-06 and I compared it to every exam objective on the N10-007. So on the N10-007, by my count, and I count a particular way based on the type of videos I need to create. For instance, on my videos, almost every slide is an objective. If you go look at the different list of objectives, there are 499 objectives on the N10-007. So I'm about 500 objectives on the N10-007. 34% of those are new from the 006. So 34% of the content of the exam objectives on the 007 aren't even covered on the 006 exam. And that's a pretty common upgrade for these types of exams. When you're going from one minor version to another minor version, that's about a good average is about 33, about a third. About a third of the exam is going to be new from the old one. But the good part of that is if you've been studying for the 006, 2/3 of the exam are effectively the same as what is on the 006. So if you have to make the jump now and you're realizing it's getting too close to the end of August, I don't want to take this exam and fail it. I don't feel I'm ready for it. I'm really going to wait. I'm going to now shift gears and I'm going to go get a 007 book and we're going to go to the 007. It's not that big of a jump. It's 30% of a jump. So you should do pretty well making that transition if that's something you're looking to do. What is your strategy? Are you planning to take the 006 or are you thinking of taking the 007, Troy?
With me, I took the 006 actually twice. The first time I was kind of upset. I had a 700 and I missed it by, I guess, a question or simulation.
Right.
Then I took it again and had the same exact score. So now I see the 007. So I'm saying, is that a big difference? How should I study? Is the simulation different? Or
in your case, you've gone through the 006 a couple of times. You know the content. You're very familiar with that content. You're just a hair away from passing that 006. You've got a month. I would recommend you stick with the 006 because it doesn't matter which exam you take, you earn exactly the same Network Plus certification. You're never going to take another Network Plus certification exam ever again anyway. You'll simply keep that certification updated and renewed as time goes on. So because of your familiarity with the 006, I would say your best strategy, your best bet, your best chance at passing this exam will be to stick with the 006 material. If you just are over it and you got a bad mojo over the 006, like there's a cloud hanging over the 006, I get it. And you say, let's shift gears. Let's go to the 007. I don't want to, 1 month isn't enough time. I need more time to really bear down and get this content very well in my head. And I don't want to be limited by a retirement date at the end of the month. Then, okay, I get it. Going with the 007 would make sense. Just be prepared to learn another 30% of things that you don't already know.
I think my biggest problem when I went over my questions that I got wrong was network operations and also like troubleshooting LAN.
This is one of the advantages you do have by taking this the exam. At the end of the exam, they give you a sheet of paper that says, here's the topics you missed. So you do have the advantage of going through and just narrowly focusing your efforts on those specific topics to really learn more about the things that you didn't know the first time going through. So that may be the strategy for you, is just follow the path of all of those things you didn't learn or didn't get right on the exam. Go back and learn those. Of course, make sure you update yourself on all of the exam objectives. And if you can get it done by the end of the month, if I was in your position, that's what I would be doing. I'd be taking the 006 before the end of the month so that I don't effectively have to start over with the 007.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your help and all the work that you do with the videos. It really help a lot.
Thanks, Troy. I appreciate it. And best of luck with that Network Plus exam. That's frustrating. I took an exam 3 times before passing. It was a network cabling exam, and it was I went the first time, didn't do well. The second time, did just as badly. The third time, squeaked through. I don't know why network cabling was such a difficult thing for me, but it was at the time. This was back in the day when they had network cabling exams. It was the CNX exam, Certified Network Expert exam, and I just could not get it. I did not come from a cabling background, though. I came from an operating system background and a hardware background on the PC side and had not really done a lot with networking, and then decided to take an exam on networking, on cabling, not even networking. It was a cabling exam. So imagine taking 568A, 568B in cable categories for different topologies and really getting into details of that. An entire certification exam on that. And you can see why I didn't do well. But boy, I sure learned a lot about network cabling by the time that was over with by taking it the third time. So that's my recommendation for anybody who has taken these exams. You're not going to get them, pass them the first time all the time. You're not going to get it 100% of the time. You learn from what you did. You make some notes of things you saw on the exam. You check out the exam objectives list they gave you on your way out, and you try to do it again. So that's my recommendation for Troy as well, is to go that direction and make sure those pieces. On the exams, people are talking about this. They're worried about how much time you have on the exams. And the list, if you notice on the CompTIA website, they tell you the exams could be a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions. So that's one where whenever you start looking at what's on the exam and what's available, make sure that that you know it might be fewer than that. So you can adjust your time. Time management on the exams is incredibly important. So make sure you know exactly how many questions you have and that you're able to get through all of them in 90 minutes. Through those. That's an important one too. Back to phone line, 703 area code. Hi, caller. Where are you calling from? What's your name?
Hi, this is Jeremy. I'm calling from the Washington, D.C. area.
Welcome, Jeremy. What can we do for you?
Hey, no, nothing much. Actually, I just wanted to thank you for having such a great program. I actually passed my A+ exam. It's been a battle. but I managed to pass it, and it was thanks to you with the notes, the exams that you give online and all that. So I just wanted to call just to thank you pretty much.
Very welcome. Congratulations. You're right. It is a battle. I think a lot of people, they go into the A+, and if you listen to what people are putting on the internet, on social media, and they go, oh, that thing's easy. But if you've never touched this technology before, how could this possibly be easy? If you've been in the industry 20 years and you've been doing networking and security, well, yeah, it's going to be a little bit easier for you. If you're someone who's never cracked a computer open before, though, this is all brand new stuff. And so, and one of the things I like about it is that you're learning a lot about a lot, and it gives you a place to jump off to next. And what are your plans after now getting the A+? What are your plans? Are you planning to get another certification? Were you getting this for a job? What were you trying to do with it?
I am planning on getting another certification. I'm thinking about going with Security Plus. But before I get to my Security Plus, I'm actually enrolled in Nova Community College, and I'm planning to get my AS degree in information technology and then bounce. To Security Plus.
That's a good combo. You're getting a formal education, you're getting certifications to go along with it, and you can start building from there as you go and look. And in your particular neck of the woods, Washington, D.C., the Security Plus exam is kind of the entry point for federal jobs, whether it's directly with the federal government or it's with one of the varied and many contractors that are in that particular neck of the woods, where they are expecting you to have just the same level of knowledge as the federal employees do. And Security Plus is an extremely common way to start that process with the federal government. So that's a good choice.
Yeah. So, but thanks to you, it helped a lot.
I did the easy part, Jeremy. You're the one who had to take the exams. I'm more than happy. I'm glad I was able to help, though. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Take
care. Have a good
one. That's great to hear. That is the one. I do the easy part on this one. I put it all together, and then it's up to everyone else to actually apply those things and getting them there. In the chat room, somebody says, I'm taking the 501 Security Plus exam tomorrow. Any tips? Yes, you are, because the 401 was retired at midnight. So you don't get a 401 to take. You have to take the 501. And the 501 is my recommendation for study, especially the day before, the week before you go in, is the same for practically all the exams, which is get your hands on the exam objectives. Use that as your checklist. You should be able to go through each objective and explain to someone else what that objective is referring to. You should be able to go through firewalls. What is stateful versus stateless? What is the difference between an IPS and an IDS? What are these different proxies? You just go through the list. And that's a big list. I get it. It may be one where you're just circling or trying to find the weak spots and going there. And make sure you've got good books, you've got videos, you've got Q&A, and you've got hands-on that you've done, because all of those are going to help you on the exam and working through them. That's one wherever I start trying to focus my efforts. I really go back to the exam objectives. Everything kind of starts and ends with the exam objectives because they are so detailed. I mentioned this over and over. It would be nice if I actually showed what I was talking about. So let's do that through the magic of live streaming, like we just made this thing up, like it's brand new. So let's grab, for instance, the 901 exam objectives. I certainly have them here somewhere. Transcripts, objectives. So let's look at these are sort of the older formatted version of the exam objectives, but this should help us anyway. So here is the 220-901 exam objectives. These are the ones that were originally put out. There have been newer versions. They changed the formatting of them, but the content is exactly the same. So let's keep scrolling through till we get to hardware. So the first section on hardware is given a scenario, configure settings, and use BIOS UEFI tools on a PC. So the first one is firmware upgrades. Flash the BIOS. How do you do that? That's a good question. BIOS component information. How do I find the RAM, the hard drive, the optical drive, the CPU? Why is that important? BIOS configurations. How do I configure the boot sequence? How do I enable and disable devices? How do I set the date and time? How do I change clock speeds or view them? How do I do anything with virtualization support? How is that associated with the BIOS? How do BIOS security, passwords, drive encryption, TPM, LoJack, and secure boot? What does that have to do with the BIOS? We are in the first section of the first domain, and you can see there is a wealth of content there. This is something that is very unique to CompTIA. Microsoft doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. Nobody else does this. Nobody else gives you this level of detail. This is your checklist. So go to the 501. So since we're talking about the 501, let me go to the 501 and pull up that list of exam objectives. So let's have a look at the 501. I'm going to grab the 501 exam objectives. Mine are annotated a bit, but we will look through those as well. Here they are, 501 exam objectives. So if I scroll down to these look very similar, don't they? They should. Here we go. First section, threats, attacks, and vulnerabilities. Mine is color-coded with things that I was doing when I was building the videos. Given a scenario, analyze indicators of compromise and determine the type of malware. So I need to know about viruses. What's a virus? And how do I know I have a virus? What is crypto malware? How do I know I have crypto malware? What is ransomware? A worm, Trojan, rootkit, keylogger, adware, spyware, bots, rat, logic bomb, and backdoor. That's section 1.1 of a very big exam. I have to know what all of those things are. What are the differences between them? How do I recognize? What are the indicators of compromise? How do I determine what type of malware that is? So there's your first set. If you don't know what a rat is, that's what you should be studying for your 501. If you don't know what a logic bomb is, that's what you should be studying for your 501 studies. So that's my recommendation, is to use those exam objectives as the point that you're going to, is trying to figure out the details of this, because that's what's going to help you when you finally walk in the door and get these questions. They're not going to ask you for a definition of these things. Define virus, define worm, define keylogger. They're not going to ask you for definitions on your exam. You're going to be asked about how to apply these things. Here's what's happening on your screen. Here's what's popped up on your screen. Here's the message that you saw. Here's the situation you're in. What is happening? And they're going to give you 4 or 5 very different things of what could be happening. And then you have to figure out, based on what they're telling you, what that is. They are questions that really go into a lot of detail. There's very few questions that have anything to do with defining or answering. A couple of them might. A couple of them might ask you about a port number. Those are very few and far between. Those are the easy ones. Those are gimmies. The rest of these questions are very, very involved, especially in the 501. So be ready for that when those get there. That's what I would focus on if I were you. If I was in this situation where I was taking the 501 tomorrow, it's about understanding how to use these things. Maybe it's hands-on then. That kind of brings those things home. Have you ever set up an IPsec tunnel between devices? Have you ever used a VPN client? Those are things that you have to know for the exam, not really necessarily the step-by-step on how to do that. But when you build an IPsec VPN, or you set up a VPN client and you connect and you use that VPN, that's something that really solidifies those ideas in your head. Maybe you bring up and use Tor. There's an easy one. You can download a Tor client, the Onion router. That's what Tor is. Download that, or download the browser that's got it built in, connect to a Tor node, and communicate and surf the net over this encrypted Tor network. That's a pretty good hands-on. You can kind of see every step along the way as it's connecting. You can see that that's encrypted. You can view the status of that info. That's a great way to do it, and having those things there. That may be a good way to go about on those as well, and looking how those would work. I think they certainly have some value associated with it. Let's go back to questions that are coming through. I have a few people that are asking questions. I'm trying to find the detailed answers that you may be looking at or trying to troubleshoot, and getting those that are there. I think I've got one, troubleshooting the boot process, and having these things here. This might help with what we're doing. And having these things here. No, I don't. Yes, I do. So there are a couple of different things that we need to know about. I'm going to show you the BIOS, the legacy BIOS bootloading. This is from my 902 troubleshooting the boot process video, because the question in the chat room was, when do I use Fix MBR and when do I use anything else, really? So if we look at a legacy configuration, here's a hard drive. It's not exactly like this on the hard drive. but you get the idea. On a single drive, there's a master boot record. And for most of us, there's a single partition associated with that drive. But some people have multiple partitions on their drive. One partition might be for Windows, one partition might be for Linux, one partition might be for something else. On my system, I have one partition for Mac OS. I've got another partition for Windows 10. There's a good example of, on mine, this is a pretty good description in this picture. Although it's not a legacy BIOS, it's a UEFI type of BIOS because that's what Mac OS uses. But the function, it's very similar in how it operates. And for your A+, this is very similar things you have to know. If something gets messed up with the master boot record, we're going to need to rebuild that master boot record with the rebuild MBR. Because what happens when you start your system, the BIOS goes to the master boot record and says, okay, you're the drive that I'm supposed to boot from. Let me check your master boot record. What do you have on here? Oh, well, I've got a couple boot sectors that are available that you can choose from to boot from. And in fact, your master boot record may redirect you to a separate set of menus that are located on one of these partitions that would give you a choice of which one to boot. The master boot record is going to redirect itself to a boot sector that will then boot the operating system from that particular volume. And there's the two problems you're going to run into. The master boot record might get corrupted, or the boot sector that is in a particular partition might get corrupted, because eventually that's what's going to run the kernel. So one of the things you might find, though, is that the master boot record might go directly to the kernel to boot that. It might bypass the boot sector entirely. But it's those with, when you're looking at UEFI boot loading, it's a very similar thing. The UEFI BIOS goes to what effectively is the MBR in the newer version of this, which is the EFI system partition, the ESP, and has boot configurations in there to decide which one of these operating systems should I boot. Should I boot the blue OS kernel, or should I boot the red OS kernel? Should I boot Mac OS, or should I boot Windows? This is exactly what's on my computer and how it's running. Now, if you have problems with the MBR, let's go forward just a little bit. Then from the command prompt, you would boot rec fix MBR. And that will fix the master boot record. But what if the boot record is fine? What if the problem is not with the master boot record? It's instead with that boot sector that's on the volume. That's when you would use fix boot. So that's why fix boot is when you have a problem. Let's back up. Fix boot is fixing this boot sector. Fix MBR is fixing that master boot record that is on the drive. So that's why you see those different options available when you're trying to figure those things out and work through those. Is you have to figure out which one of those is my problem. And that's why often when you read on the internet fixing problems after malware, they recommend you do both, because they think the malware could have corrupted your MBR and it could have corrupted the boot sector that's in a particular volume. So that's why that's there. Yeah, all of these, the BCD is a Windows thing. Anytime you see anything dealing with the boot configuration data, the BCD, that's a Windows thing. And that's why on the exam, all of the troubleshooting that you do is all Windows troubleshooting. They're really not asking you to do a ton of Mac OS or Linux troubleshooting. There's a little bit of things you have to know at the command line, but most of the troubleshooting deals are on the exam are really focused on Windows. So that's why you'd be. Good point, because Joseph in the chat room, I mentioned using the Onion router Tor. A lot of organizations don't like you using Tor because they have really bad firewalls that do not allow them to control that traffic. You could effectively circumvent security tools by using programs like the Onion router, like UltraSurf. You know, those are programs that will create an encrypted tunnel that effectively gets through a number of different firewalls. If they have a modern firewall, then it won't matter. They'll just block it. The modern firewalls recognize that's Tor traffic. You can't do that. But there may be a formal policy, an acceptable use policy in AUP that says you can't even run it. If we see that you're running this, that's against policy, and we'll do whatever we need to do to have you not do that anymore. Maybe you're no longer with the organization. Maybe you're no longer employed there. Maybe you're no longer working there. Maybe you're no longer going to school there. So you want to be very careful when you use those kinds of tools. You don't run Nmap on anybody's network. You don't load up Tor or UltraSurf on anybody's network. You need to make sure it's okay before you do things like that. So that's exactly the situation you'd be in. So one of the questions, and you may have seen this already in the last example I gave, is, to practice these things, you really need hands-on. That's the fourth of my four things I tell you when you need good books, good videos, good Q&A, and good hands-on. The hands-on part is really just as important. It would be nice if there was a lab where a computer was broken and I need to fix it. There's plenty of labs like that out there. They're usually commercial labs. They're running a VM. There's people supporting it, so there's usually a cost associated with that. Or if you are familiar enough with Windows VMs, you could load up a Windows VM or download a Windows VM. I can bring up a list at modern.ie. Modern.ie redirects you to a Microsoft Edge developer website. And that is a site under the Tools menu, provides you with options for virtual machines. The license on these virtual machines allows you to run, I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can actually see it. The license allows you to run IE7, Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 in a virtual machine. You can download an entire virtual machine as long as you're using that VM for non-production purposes. I've already gone through the licensing. I've already read it. So it applies to what we're doing, which is running this in a lab. You cannot use these as a production system, production service, or as your desktop. But you can download the VM, load it up. Let's say we want to run Windows for current, this one, run to Windows 8.1, run it in VirtualBox, Vagrant, VMware, Hyper-V, or Parallels, which covers any operating system, really. So if you're running those virtual environments, install VirtualBox, choose Windows 8.1, download this VM, and now you got Windows 8.1 running on a window on your desktop. Now, from there, maybe you break it. Maybe you use a utility to go into the MBR and screw it up, mess it up, and then reboot your VM and it doesn't work anymore. All right, let's now start up Windows, go to the the command prompt, run the Fix MBR. Did it work? Those are good things to do. And I think that'd be worth your time to either have a lab that's already doing that or do it yourself. It's a little more work when you do it yourself, but you learn a little more when you're doing it yourself and going down that line. So that may be something you might want to consider as well. Yeah, those are free. Though, by the way, Microsoft makes those available to you for free to use in a lab. That's modern.ie, modern.ie for Internet Explorer. It's designed to be a development site for Internet Explorer developers so that they can download these multiple operating systems, run their IE apps, and make sure, really, or Edge now, run their Edge apps in these different versions of operating systems and really be able to see how it reacts on the native OS. So it's pretty good. And they make available Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and 8. And Windows 10, although you don't need Windows 10 for the current version of the A+ exam. It's kind of nice to have that there. So it's kind of useful. In the chat room, talking specifically about Network Plus, Backmask has the N10-006 book. He was comparing it to the N10-007. They seem almost identical. As I mentioned, 30% of the content, 32%. I'll tell you exactly the number, 35.2%. 34.268% of the N10-007 is new from the 006. So hopefully if you're getting a book for the N10-007, it's one that has 30% different content. Now, it's not more content, it's just different. So the comparison you were making is that there's 30 more pages in the 007. Even if it came in at the same number of pages, I would expect that someone creating a book for the 007 is only going to include the topics from the 007 exam objectives. So I would bet if you're planning to take the 007, don't use the 006 book. If you're planning to take the 006, don't use the 007 book. Make sure that your books and study materials match the version of the exam you're going to take, and you're going to do fine. That's what really should be driving you. If it's a good book, they're going to follow the exam objectives just like my videos follow the exam objectives. They'll probably be in a different order, but they'll be focused on exactly what those exam objectives might be. That's the important part. Read reviews, look through the books, make sure you're familiar with those. Not all books are created equally. So make sure you know the difference as well in those. There's other questions in the chat room. Let's have a look at those. I'll be completing my BAS degree in 2 semesters in networking and security assurance. Do you think I should do the Network Plus exam or Security Plus exam? Generically speaking, I like people to have a networking background. I think having as much networking knowledge as possible leverages you for anything else you want to do in IT. So if you know networking, it will be easier for you to manage data centers. It will be easier for you to manage security. Operating systems will be easier because there's a whole layer of technology now that you know solid, and you can focus on the operating system. Databases is easier. Implementing network technology obviously would be easier. Networking seems to be the center of IT, and everything else kind of branches out from there. I guess anybody who is doing databases might say the same thing. But having gone from desktop operating systems to server operating systems to networking to security through over 20 years in IT, the networking piece is the one that always allowed me to bounce to anything else. Security, for example, IT security is mostly networking. There's a security layer on top of it, but the foundation of it is solid with networking. So if somebody was trying to decide, how do I make the most of what I'm trying to do? I say get a good networking foundation and go from there. Now, it's going to depend, of course, on what employers are looking for. Sometimes that will decide for you. Doesn't matter what I think. If the employer says, I really want you to have Security Plus, you bet. I'm absolutely getting Security Plus then. No question. That will take the lead on there. Eventually, you're going to come back, though, to networking. I bet you. To do that. It just becomes very, very much a jumping off point. It becomes the leverage that you use for almost anything else in IT and those things. And I'm talking specifically about IT before I get your cards and letters. Not really talking about computer science here. Computer science is the development side of things. That's a completely different world. If we took technology and broke it into 2 pieces, there's programming, computer science, hardware creation, kind of the building of technology. And then there's using technology, which is information technology. That's the IT side. I know there is an effort to merge those things together, to blend together those things. That's not going to work. I know that maybe a little bit. For some people, maybe you can blend some of that together. It's not going to blend together. So focus on the IT side of things, and I say focus on the networking, and you bounce around to anything else in IT. If you're somebody who's doing development, you're doing application programming, you're building hardware, that's a completely different world. You probably shouldn't be taking any of these certifications. That's not for you. That's a different world for those. And that's you have to decide what makes sense for you. Which one of these makes the most sense for what you're doing. I think that would be the way to focus on what employers are looking for, focus on what you want to do, and you're going to do fine for those. Other people that are putting questions in here about what do I think of this website? What do I think of that website? I have no idea. I don't go to those websites. I don't have time to go to other websites and go through their stuff. I'm sorry to do that. I have enough time to do this. I'm barely making it in this room, getting things together. Right now, the amount of things that we're working on is massive. I'm busy doing those pieces. I just have no idea. I have no control, and I have no, even if I went to another website and I looked at their products or resources, they could change it tomorrow. I have no control over those things. So can't help with those. Sorry. The other piece, though, and I mentioned this because you were trying to decide, do I go networking or do I go security? We were talking earlier, was it Jeremy? It was in DC, in DC, in the federal government of the United States, one of the minimum certifications you need is Security Plus. So if you're in that particular geographical area, Security Plus is actually more valuable to you overall than Network Plus. So as I mentioned, I think networking is great. I think that's what you should do, but I could be completely wrong depending on what you're trying to do, where you are, and what different employers are looking for. So that's a good example of where if you're in DC, I might change my mind on that one. I might decide, no, Security Plus is going to be more valuable for you to get started in IT on anything relating to anything in the DC area. So that's it. So, well, Maria says she's in DC, but she's going to take Network Plus because she doesn't work in those particular areas that the federal government touches. That's fine too. That's the decision you have to make. Like, am I going to need that for what I'm doing, or do I want to build on this foundation that I can use to do something else? You know, it's different for everyone. And I get those questions all the time that say, what do I do? I don't know. What do you do? There's so many different variables involved, and we can go through those variables and figure it out. And I can give you pluses and minuses, but ultimately it's very dependent on your situation and what you're trying to do. So that's the challenge, is that it's never the same path for everyone. My path is completely different than others. And that's one of the things that's unique about IT, I think, is that there is no set direct path. You know, if you want to be an electrician, there's a very specific path that gets you to being an electrician. It's not that way with IT. Very different to have that situation. Does networking provide job security? Nothing provides job security. That was an easy one. Thanks for the question. It's true. There's no job security. But the thing that helps you in any situation is your foundational knowledge you have of these technologies and how you apply them. So, and that is not just the technology, but how you apply them. So if you're someone who works hard, you're a good team player, you're someone who can help get these projects pushed through under budget and above the expectations that were there's your job security. Almost has nothing to do with technology, does it? It's a combination of getting those things there. I think from my perspective, I think networking does provide you with a good bit of job security because of the jumping off points. You can go to anywhere else. So that's what you're trying to do, is get that there. In the chat room, people are saying, does a bachelor's degree help? It does, but it's those four things I mentioned. You need a formal degree. It helps. Helps if you have a formal degree. It helps if you have some certifications. It helps if you have some experience. I understand that's a catch-22. You can't get experience until you have experience, but that helps. And the fourth one is, it helps if you know people, if you network. And I've said this in other study groups, is make sure you concentrate on getting your formal education. Make sure you concentrate on getting your certifications. Find some way to get some type of experience, even if it's on a volunteer basis. And also don't forget about joining your local user groups. Microsoft user groups, Cisco user groups, security user groups, just technology user groups. In most large geographical areas, there are many to choose from. And that's where you're going to meet people. In our industry, especially in geographical areas, we're not an industry where we move around a lot because there's so much technology where we happen to be. You know, we find a place, we have a family, it's hard to move, and we don't have to because there's so much technology. You know, we don't have to move to a city that has a factory. We can stay where we are, and there's all kinds of technology jobs to choose from. And for that reason, the people you meet in a particular geography are the people you will see throughout your entire career. It's a small world, they say, and it's absolutely true in IT. So meet those people, go to the user group meetings, meet them. Even if you don't even have a job yet, meet them. Oh, where do you work? Oh, I've seen that building. That's fantastic. You work out of that building, you work out of somewhere else. What do you do? No, I don't have I'm just finishing up my degree. I'm looking to get a job doing something related to networking or security. Do you hire people that do that type of thing? What do you look for when you hire people doing that type of thing? You know, you're eating your pizza, you're drinking a soda, it's between presentations. That's an amazing amount. Can I add you on LinkedIn just to keep up with what's going on? Maybe I got questions later. These people wouldn't be at these meetings if they didn't want to meet you. That's one of the advantages of having that there. So make sure, CompTIA does have it's kind of a user group, an AITP, technology professionals. It is not everywhere yet, but large geographies, large geographical areas, large cities, there are a number of people having those user groups as well. Cisco user groups, Microsoft user groups. Go to meetup.com. Many user groups will put their information in the meetup.com. Are people as helpful as you're suggesting? They are. This is not a adversarial type scenario, especially if someone's going to a user group meeting. It's a user group. It's getting in touch and meeting other users of these technologies. And the people that do this kind of thing with these technologies are really hoping to help other people. At the very least, a lot of times in these meetings, it becomes, I'm doing this and I ran into this problem. Oh, we ran into that problem too, and here's what we did. So even in just an ad hoc conversation can have people helping each other at these things. They're very helpful in these. And they're most of the time people want to be able to find the next group of people coming in. And I will tell you also, a lot of these companies, that an insurance company, a transportation company, a manufacturing company, these large companies will often have some type of financial incentive for you to bring other people into the organization. So there's a promotion they do internally that says, if you bring us a resume and we hire that person, we'll give you $500. We'll give you $250. They'll give you something. They'll give you an Amazon gift card. They'll give you something. So very often, people who are very good at this will, yes, get on my LinkedIn. Let me build a database. Let me find all the people in my area that would work with this. And when a job opening comes up, they'll send messages out going, hey, we just got that help desk position I was telling you about last month. Hey, I know we met months ago, but this might be interesting for you. Send me your resume and I'll send it to the folks and we'll go that direction too. So there may be a financial incentive to talk to you about job openings and what you might need. And at very least, you've now learned something about what that organization likes to do with hiring people, and that might help you decide where you go next with your certification paths. That helps a lot with that, in fact. So make sure. Yeah, a good example. So Greg in the chat room had an informational interview with a 20-year IT professional just to decide what direction to go and maybe recommendations of what they can do with their resume. They weren't hiring, but this is, not everybody is an angry person who doesn't want you to succeed. Most of the people in IT are really great people to work with. And I'm speaking as someone who worked in a role where I went to 3 or 4 different companies a day, meeting hundreds and hundreds of people a year, speaking in very large organizations at large meetings and talking to people about what they were doing. It's very rare that I would run into somebody who was just cantankerous, who was a mean person. Everybody is just great in this. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't that way. I'm on the internet. You got to work hard to hurt my feelings, but it's okay because most of the information I see, most of the emails I get are people trying to do things better. It's not in any way adversarial. I never run into that. Very rarely do I run into a problem like that. So not even a chance I would get into those things. And I don't like mean people either. And so I don't work with them. There have been people in my career I've met that were mean. So I stopped working with them. Sorry, not going to work with you anymore. Drive safely. Take care. Am I going to attend the security conferences in Vegas next week? Is it time for all of the security stuff to happen? I'm not. I don't tend to go to those. I used to go to CanSec West in Vancouver. I don't go to anywhere. I stay right here and I don't have to go anywhere. I can talk to you right here. I stay in this room and I create content. So I don't go to any security conferences. Sorry. A talk for career advice would be fun. Actually, that'd be kind of neat to do, but I don't have any plans for those. I've done enough. I used to work as a technical marketing role where my job was to get on a plane, fly somewhere, speak, and then get on a plane and go to the next one. I'd speak in, hundreds of people, tens of people, hundreds of people, or thousands of people. And we would do that. And we just talk. Let me give you an idea of what we're doing, what this technology means and how it works and how it might help you. And so I did that for well over a year, where I would just get on a plane and go. So I'm a Delta million miler and probably another million miles on all the others combined, and been around the world because of a technology job. I would have never guessed or imagined it in a world to have that there. So am I Canadian? I am not. Mrs. Professor Messer, turns out, is. Mrs. Professor Messer is a U.S. citizen, but she's Canadian. There's a whole story there. And we didn't know she was Canadian until this year. Another great story there. That's another one we'll have to write up sometime. But we're actually going to Canada hopefully soon for that reason. So maybe we can make her a Canadian, though. Technically, according to Canada, she's a Canadian. She's not officially a Canadian, but according to Canada, she is. See, it's a whole, when you get into immigration issues, there's a whole bunch of, I know, what? Where? Huh? Yes, it's true. Everything I just said is true. Mrs. Professor Messer was born in Miami and is a Canadian. Sort of. She's according to Canada, she's legitimately Canadian, but not officially Canadian. There you go. And trying to figure that one out is a whole nother thing indeed. And in the chat room, we're now well outside the scope. People want to know, can you find your wife in IT? You don't find your wife in IT like I did. You find her on a blind date and she's a nurse. I think that works out pretty well. I know the technology and she can fix me if I'm broke. I think that's the best way to do that. And there's a total social life with IT. In fact, there's always something to talk about. A lot of my last 15 years in my career was as a technical representative for a company that sold a product. So it was working at Network General with the sniffer. And I had to know everything technical about the sniffer. So it was already a job. Those types of jobs as systems engineers are very technical. They're jobs that really, if you're into the technologies, they feed into that. And it's a job you can love. And it's one where you get to go a lot of places and talk to people about how awesome this technology is. And maybe it would fit in what you're trying to do. But one of the great things is when you all get together, there's always something to talk about. Sometimes it's technology, sometimes it isn't, but there's always something to talk about. And we always talk about when we get together, I will see you at the bar downstairs and we'll talk about that. So there's plenty of social opportunity to communicate. We're social people. You know, we always have that story that the technical person is in the dark down in the basement. All right, maybe there's a little bit to that, but these are people most of the time that they have a family, they have things that they do. Everybody I met with had a hobby. They like to go to the football games. They follow what's going on with the hockey. They like to go out and they race motorcycles. There's always some story. They like to go fishing. I love to hear what people are doing there. Yeah, of course. So we all have something like that. I'll do this all day. I'll go to the movies with my wife. I'll go get on the Xbox and I'll be social with people on there. There's always something going on. I'm stuck in No Man's Sky right now. It sucked me in. So I'll spend an hour or two on that at night, talking to other people and doing other things there. There's always something social related to that. Technology is just something you do during the day. And you can have fun with somehow during the night. I've got a ham radio license. I need to take more advantage of that. That's very social activity. Going to the movies with my wife is just as important in those things too. So find the thing. Don't get stuck in the technology world. Don't just do technology during the day and then come home and do technology unless there's something, unless you're working on a certification, then absolutely do technology at home. But there's a means to that end. And it's not about doing more technology. It's about how can I do this during the day so that we can go fishing on the weekends. That's what it's about. And you get that right balance. There is a right balance and you'll find it and you'll have it there. Back to the phones real quick before my voice goes out. We'll go to the 631 area code. Hi, caller. Are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Chris, and I'm calling from New York.
Welcome, Chris. What can we do for you?
So I was wondering, for the past couple of years, I've been interested in getting my certification. I actually got it last year.
Nice.
And I've been wanting to get a to get a job, but I haven't been able to find anything. But I recently inherited like a lot of money, so I was wondering what kind of advice would you have for me to further my education with the money I got, so I can go and do something that I love for a living.
That's a pretty good way to approach this. You've now got something you can use to invest in yourself and figure out the direction you want to go. So you've already got at least certifications. You have some idea of technology in general and where things go. During the process of getting some of your certifications, was there a particular area that interested you the most? Was there operating systems or networking or databases or cloud-based technologies? Was there something that really appealed to you?
I guess you could say I guess the security aspect of it interested me.
There's no right or wrong answer. Everybody has a different idea of what direction they want to go. The one thing I will tell you is I mentioned earlier those four things: a formal education, there's certifications, there is that experience that you might want to look into getting, and then there's the social side of things. That first one, the formal education, is not always where you're going to a university and getting a 4-year degree. It may be focusing on security at a 2-year organization. I've noticed there's a lot more 2-year degrees that are focusing more on specific technologies, and that might be where people want to invest their time and their money to learn the foundations of what you need to eventually get that better job. You should, of course, have an idea of where you want to go with this, what you want to be able to do with this. Some people want to go into security so they could be a penetration tester. They're going to travel the world with their laptop. They're going to plug into somebody's network and they're going to try to find problems. Mine was, I wanted to learn everything there was to learn about a particular manufacturer's product. And then I wanted to take that knowledge out and put it on people's networks, demonstrate that it works, show how awesome that technology was, and be able to apply that and fix the problems that they were having with their particular environment. Other people like staying in a corporate environment. They show up in the morning. They do all the things they need to do during the day. There's projects on imaging and voice over IP and cloud-based technologies. And at the end of the day, they can go home and spend time with their family. Everybody has a different priority of what they want to do. This is this influx of cash now gives you the option to decide, what do I want to do with this? And at that point, it may be a question of doing some research on, I want to do systems engineering. How did you get there? What do I have to do to become a Cisco SE, to become a Palo Alto Networks SE, to become an SE with a network management company, or to do security, a SIM company? Security logging and reporting. Those are the things you need to figure out and find out from them. And maybe it is a point where you're now going to those user group meetings and asking people, now that I've got this opportunity, if you were me, what would you do? And see what they have to say. If I got a big bunch of money and I was just starting out, I would probably start with making sure I had that formal degree, which in the big scheme of things isn't that expensive at a community college or even a 4-year degree. I would not go to boot camps. Some of these corporate training companies are thousands of dollars to go to a week of training. Would not do it. There's way too much content to be able to absorb in such a short period of time that you're not getting the most for your money in those particular environments. It would be more of trying to figure out how to now maybe take a job where I wasn't making the money I needed to yet, but that was the way into that company. And because I've got now some money in the bank, I could take a hit for a year, but now start moving up into jobs within that company where there is more of an annual salary that makes sense for what I'm doing. So you also have flexibility in what jobs you take now as well, along with flexibility as to what knowledge you go out and try to get. So I know there's not much we can do over the phone to drill down on that. But my recommendation is to ask the same question of multiple people who are in those roles and see what they have to say. And I think you'll start to be able to piece together the right solution for you, because everybody's path is going to be different.
So like about community college, isn't that like something like college that is not as expensive or whatever, but like it could still benefit me?
It tends to be not as expensive on a per hour basis. Most of the time, community colleges tend to be state funded. So it's a state organization and often allows you to even go to a four-year college for the state very easily. There's often paths you can upgrade to that. And most of the time, they are very focused on what I call practical matters. I've mentioned on study groups before that I got a degree in business management from a four-year college. And that degree in business management required me to take a semester in a higher math. I had to take this math class that I'm never going to use ever in business or anywhere else. So I have a calculus that I spent an entire semester taking. There's no calculus in business management. There's no calculus in business. There's no calculus in IT. There's calculus in other things. If I was going into computer science, or I was going into physics, or I was going into biology, I was going into some other type of science, I get it. But four-year colleges haven't quite figured out IT yet. Some of them have, but the vast majority of them just have no idea what to do. And you see this often because some organizations say, oh, you want an IT degree? You need to learn programming. Those are two different things. Those are completely not related in any way, shape, or form. So you do have to check. Community colleges often are more focused on teaching you security, teaching you Cisco, teaching you Microsoft. And when you come out of the community college, you actually have something you can use for your first day on the job, rather than me that was stuck with calculus.
Yeah. So I guess I'll go check that out and ask like my local college about that. I'm just so excited to be able to get the chance to be able to to do this with the inheritance.
I would say before you talk to anyone, figure out where you want to be, and then it will be very obvious what steps you need to take to get to that point. You've got the flexibility now to figure out where you want to go with this. I don't recommend you go to talk to somebody at community college without knowing what you want at the end of it, because that's going to be their first question to you as well, is what do you want to do with this? Do you want to get in a network and then move into security? That's the normal path. People don't usually start in IT security. They usually start in networking and they move into security. That's a very common path. And if that's the one you think would work for you, then that's a great path to go. That's the one I took that made sense for what I was doing. That might make sense for you as well.
Okay. Well, thanks for the advice.
Best of luck, Chris. Thanks for calling. That's a good place to be if you are someone who now has, you've got a little bit of a buffer. You got a little bit of a pillow that's in the bank. You can now work through those pieces. To the 903 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yes, my name is Scott Carlton. I'm calling from Texarkana, Texas.
Nice. Welcome, Scott. What can we do for you?
Well, thank you for taking my call. The reason is that I've decided to get into IT, and I'm starting with my A+ certification. The only thing that I do have concern about is my age. I'm 56 years old. I do have, some background in computing. I was a computer tech for various colleges and universities, but that was back, decades ago. And there, of course, I'm finding out that a lot of changes have since.
A couple,
yes. Yeah. And so I've decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and it seems like A+, is going to be my good fit. And, but again, I understand that this environment is a lot of young people that are involved. And I just wanted to kind of get a feel from you. Have I started too late to really do anything with this? Am I making a good choice? Just kind of want to get your take on it.
So the biggest challenges we have at our age, and I'll lump us into that 50-year-old category, is that there is ageism in anywhere you go in our industry, especially if people are looking to hire someone who's going to be around for a very long time, a number of years in an organization. They are usually hiring younger people. They usually don't hire the older folks for an entry level job, and that is something people say They're absolutely not. We'll hire anybody of any age, of any kind. But when you get into the interview room, there are always biases and challenges with getting over particular humps where people are not expecting you to walk in and be that particular age. Prior to this point, what type of industry were you in? Was it manufacturing or transportation or medical or finance? What was it?
Well, a lot of my education has been in the aviation industry. I was a commercial pilot, and but here I've due to family health issues, I've been more of a caregiver, taking care of my family and stuff. And now I'm getting to that point now where that's kind of starting to resolve, and I'm ready to get back out there. And you know, computers have always been an interest of mine since the 80s, and it's just, you know, I don't want to put all my eggs in this basket.
Sure.
If because the aviation has done that to me as well. I put all my time and effort in learning to fly and all this kind of stuff, only to because of the economics of
Right.
that time period, I wasn't able to really pursue my ultimate goal. And so now I haven't flown since 9/11. I had a flight school. They shut us down because of 9/11,
Right.
and I haven't flown since. I just said the heck with it.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so I'm trying to restart. Scott is trying to restart himself again, and like I said, computer has always been fascinating and interesting into, you know, for me. And so I chose, well, let's get an A+ certification. I've already got a college education. I've got a little bit of background in computers. Let's just take this and see what I can go. Because I'm not going to end with A+. I'm going to go on forward to get my Network Plus and possibly my Security Plus. And so this isn't just the final. You know, A+ is not the final. It's just kind of a stepping stone for other things. But again, I don't want to do all of this only to find out, Scott, you're too old. You should have, you know, done something else.
Well, the computers don't know how old you are, and we're at a point in our lives when you get to this particular age where things are much more serious, and we tend to take things a little bit more with a much more serious approach. For example, if I went back to college, I would probably have better scores in college because I would have approached it with a little more seriousness than I did at the time. Not that I wasn't serious, but I just wasn't serious. I was a very bad college student. But one of the advantages you have is the experiences you've had. So a lot of people will come to me and say, I was a nurse and I want to go into a computer-related, IT-related field, or I was working as a truck driver and I want to go into IT. And these are conversations I have with people on my site all the time, where it's now you're now starting your second career, and this is a very common thing that people are working on. And I think IT is a good solution for that because the technology doesn't care how old you are. You're able to accomplish things regardless of age. There's not a lot of physical requirements associated with that. You're not going to be lifting heavy things unless you're in a data center, and hopefully they'll give you equipment that will help you lift these into the rack. But you're not doing that day to day. You're sitting at a desk, you're typing. It's a great job for that type of thing. But you have these experiences in your past that can help you. If somebody was a nurse, I always recommend to them, go to your hospital's IT group and talk to them. If you've been in aviation, this may be an opportunity to work at the airport. Most of the time, the airports are city or municipality run. That's a great position with great benefits, and they're positions that will start you in at the bottom level and help you as you go. And in many airports, that's all they do is they help with the technology at the airports, and you already know about the airport, everything else regarding what's happening at the airport. So there's value there because a hospital has technologies that are very specific to hospitals. Airports have technologies very specific to airports. Manufacturing companies have technologies very specific to manufacturing. People that are working with power companies have technologies very specific to power. So that's one where you may be able to leverage that with the people that are in those places. And you should, because you have a background and a knowledge. Also, at our age, an important part of getting a job anywhere, and in IT, this applies as well, is the people you know. So you've made relationships with people in a professional role and a personal role through the years. This is where it can really help you, because you can go back to those people and say, I'm now moving into IT. Are there IT people in your organization I can talk to? And by having somebody at our who's at our age and knows us at that level, who can trust us and know us to work well in that organization, they can recommend a job or get us through a lot more of the filters than we would have had to jump through if we didn't know anybody in those places. So there's a couple of things there we can leverage a little bit better than if we were just starting out in the industry, or if we were just out of college and trying to figure this out, that we should absolutely take advantage of. If you don't have a LinkedIn that has a bunch of people on it, now's the time to start building it. It's never soon enough to start building your LinkedIn database of all the people you've worked with. Those can be very, very valuable connections. I think I've had probably about 15 jobs in IT where I've either moved into a company or within different jobs within the company throughout my entire career. I didn't know anybody. I don't know how I got that first job. I didn't know anybody at that first job. Every single job after that, I knew somebody who worked there. That's how important it is to know those people. And that can really help you when you're trying to get into that second round of a career at an age where we are trying to make that happen. And the third thing I'll mention is that now that you're at this point, maybe it's one where you don't have a boss. Maybe you start writing programs. Maybe you start repairing people's computers and you have your own company doing that kind of thing. There's opportunity there as well. So maybe it's not where you're having to rely on anybody. You can rely on yourself.
Oh, fantastic. Well, listen, Professor Messer, I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everything that you do for us. It's beyond the call of duty, I feel, on your part, and I do thank you so much.
You're very welcome, Scott. Best of luck.
Thank you.
There's always a place to go, and people are always willing to help. So take advantage of those conversations and those things that we can do to help. I know that's what I've done in my career. There's been people I've reached out to whenever I saw a job opening and said, I know we worked together years ago, but you'd be great at this. Those are places where building that LinkedIn network can be very valuable. Don't dismiss that LinkedIn. Even if you're in college right now, start that LinkedIn. There's people in your college. Have them get a LinkedIn account. You're going to need this later on. I joined a business fraternity at my college where I got to meet people. So that networking part of it becomes very helpful. And I met people later on through the years that weren't part of my business fraternity, but they were at other chapters. So there was something to talk about and have a conversation about. It helps. Every little bit of that helps. Well, we've come to the end of, over 2.5 hours of a study group. We've gone a little bit long on this one, but the boys held out. So we're going to go with that. Thanks for joining us on this one. It's always nice to have you here. It's nicer when there's people who are able to answer the questions in the first hour and have conversations in the chat room and through the phone calls in the second hour. The conversations don't stop here. There's a contact us link at the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website that goes directly to me. So if you have questions or ideas or thoughts or suggestions, I am more than happy to take those from you. I can't respond to every single one of them, but if somebody has a very specific question, I do try to get back with at least a little bit of information and we can keep the conversation going. Thanks for joining us on this study group. Check the calendar, professormesser.com/calendar for the next study group. Otherwise, we'll see you next month on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone.